Chapter 611. Han Xiao had originally thought that the subterranean mutants had to build their nests near the mines and could not move. However, Helu's report had refreshed his impression. The subterranean mutants could actually move on their own. This concept was akin to finally reaching a high ground and preparing to take down the crystal on the other side, only to realize that the other side had already taken the crystal and escaped. They actually took the initiative to escape. Could it be because I invaded their nest last time? Han Xiao was rather surprised and made some deductions. The entire nest had besieged one intruder, but he had managed to escape with ease. Many of his fellow subterranean mutants had died in battle. Although only a few thousand subterranean mutants had been killed, the other subterranean mutants felt as if they had been there through the telepathic connection. In other words, Han Xiao alone had scared off tens of millions of subterranean mutants, leaving an indelible psychological shadow in their hearts. Knowing how to fear the strong was an instinct, so the subterranean mutants in Nest Number 1 treated him as their natural enemy and migrated. The wide-area telepathic connection provided the subterranean mutants with high-efficiency decision-making abilities. That should be the case. Han Xiao rubbed the back of his neck and felt that his guess was not far from the mark. The subterranean mutants had the habit of retreating when they encountered danger that they could not resist. This situation made his train of thought clear. The biggest reason the Sunils had attacked the subterranean mutants was to destroy the prophecy stone mines that the subterranean mutants had been protecting. Now, it was proven that the subterranean mutants could actually excavate the mines themselves. Since they could migrate, this conflict could be resolved. As long as the subterranean mutants brought the prophecy stones away from planet Sunil and moved to an uninhabited planet as their habitat, the problem would be solved. This way, the Sunils would not have to carry out the genocide, which was the best solution for both sides. Han Xiao frowned and immediately realized the difficulty. This method seemed good, but the feasibility was very low. To capture hundreds of millions of subterranean mutants one by one, choose an uninhabited planet, and prepare a large number of spaceships for the migration, it would require tens of times more manpower and resources. If they could migrate, the Sunils would have done so long ago. Obviously, the Sunils did not have such an ability, and they did not want to abandon the home that they had built with great difficulty. Therefore, wiping out the subterranean mutants was more cost-effective. To the Sunils, protecting the subterranean mutants was a waste of resources. Destroying them was always the easiest option. So, if we want to use migration as a substitute for extermination, we need to have external forces involved, such as large financial groups. Han Xiao frowned. What was the point of wasting so many resources to migrate the subterranean mutants? Could an undeveloped race bring enough benefits to cover the cost of a galactic migration? If they couldn't, then the value of saving them would be greatly reduced. According to the terms of the contract, keeping the subterranean mutants was unnecessary. Now, it was certain that Sunil would definitely carry out the plan of exterminating the entire race. Therefore, this meant that the life and death of a species depended on one's thoughts. So, to save or not to save, Han Xiao was a little hesitant. There was originally no room for negotiation in the conflict between races, but now, another possibility had appeared. Even if the Sunils realized it, they would definitely not bring it up. Therefore, as long as Han Xiao did not bring it up, the operation would continue until the subterranean mutants were completely wiped out. Originally, he was just an executor who only needed to fulfill the requirements of his employer. However, when he realized the new method, his role changed. He was no longer a simple mercenary. Instead, he became the only decision-maker who could decide the life and death of a species. The pressure of making decisions was shifted to him. When he had no other choice, Han Xiao would not have any psychological burden. However, the situation was different now. A weak species could not even decide their own life and death. He had the power to decide the life and death of an entire race. After thinking for a long time, Han Xiao sighed. Haluz, continue the operation and attack the other nest. Understood. Haluz hung up the communication. Han Xiao put away the communicator, called Sylvia over, and told her to supervise the construction team. He then left the construction site and found Fu Ding, who was enjoying the natural atmosphere in the forest. In the green forest, Fu Ding sat cross-legged under a tree. An invisible wave of psychic energy rippled in the air. This was the result of a psychic training. Psychic energy was a mixture of energy and psychic energy. There were similar abilities in the Esper class as well. However, psychics were able to enter the 5 major superclasses because they had a complete training system. As long as one was talented, they would be able to control psychic energy through training. There was no need for genetic mutations in the Esper class. "Why are you looking for me?" Hearing Han Zhao's footsteps, Fu Ding opened his eyes and smiled politely. However, he could not hide the distance in his eyes. Fu Ding was very against the employment of the Black Star Corps in this war. Slaughtering a native race had crossed his bottom line. Fu Ding's attitude toward Han Zhao had a subtle change because of this. "I would like to ask for your help. It's still the same request as last time. Study the telepathy of the subterranean mutants and try to communicate with them," Han Zhao said slowly. "Didn't I reject it already? My answer is still the same." Fu Ding did not hesitate. He knew that this war was not wrong, but he still did not want to be an accomplice to a massacre. Han Zhao was not surprised. With his understanding of Fu Ding, this guy was more neutral and kind. "You misunderstood. This time is not because of the previous time." Han Zhao explained his idea of migrating the subterranean mutants and smiled. "If we can build a communication bridge, perhaps this hypothesis can become a reality." Fu Ding's eyes lit up, and he stood up. "Are you serious? You know how trustworthy I am." Han Zhao smiled. Fu Ding stared at Han Zhao and suddenly revealed a gentle smile that could make girls scream. The surroundings were dyed in a warm color. "I was not wrong about you. Let's go. I will do my best to help you." The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Inviting Fu Ding for help was the decision made by Han Zhao. He chose to protect the subterranean mutants. It was not because he was kind, but because he believed in sustainable development. Sunil's employment was over once and for all. Exterminating the race was done, but migrating the subterranean mutants had potential benefits. It was like harvesting twice the amount of leeks in a vegetable field. The subterranean mutants were a race with a lot of potential. They might have a chance to become a new resource land for NPCs, so they were worth investing in. Although the initial investment was not small, Han Zhao now had the capital to squander. Planting leeks, digging a hole, burying some soil, and counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mental communication avoided the problem of language barriers. If he could reach a consensus with the subterranean mutants and get them to leave planet Sunil willingly, they would be able to gather together, which would save him a lot of effort and not have to capture them one by one. However, with the civilization level of the subterranean mutants, they might not be able to understand the concept of universe and planet. They had not even looked up at the stars before. Therefore, the only way was to let the subterranean mutants feel the threat of death and use fear to control them, making them surrender for survival. Therefore, a suitable massacre was necessary. Apart from that, there was another reason for doing this. The epic feeling of saving an entire race was obviously greater, and the players would like to play the role of the savior more. Therefore, they would have a greater sense of belonging to the Black Star Corps. Of course, winning back Fu Ding's favorability was also another reason. Han Zhao did not want the leaks in his house to pull him out of the ground and run away. Half an hour later, in the underground world, the expedition team built a temporary camp. The lighting equipment made the dark underground world as bright as day, and the Sunil armored troops stood guard outside. Haluz had already received the next order. He led the army toward nest number 2, which was marked on the map. When they arrived at the edge of the nest, the vanguard team quickly encountered a large group of subterranean mutants, about 300 to 400 of them. What the F*CK? They are much uglier than in the pictures. Many players had disgusted expressions, especially the female players. The subterranean mutants, which had insect-like characteristics, were basically heresy in this era where looks were everything. This group of subterranean mutants also noticed the expedition team and came over. Their tentacles waved as if they were curious about what this group of creatures that they had never seen before was. 222. The next moment, the armored troops fired at the same time. The Sunil armored soldiers pulled the trigger of their large-caliber armor-piercing assault rifles without hesitation. The gunshots broke the silence of the underground world, and the blinding gunfire lit up the underground world. The dense rain of bullets easily tore apart the bodies of hundreds of subterranean mutants, turning them into minced meat. "Advance!" the officers of the various teams shouted. The Sunil troops marched forward, and their heavy armor stepped on the ground. Their footsteps were orderly, and the players on the side looked over. Rumble. At this time, an earthquake-like sound came from the nest. The ground shook slightly, and the sound of thousands of beasts rapidly approached. Defensive formation, hold a position. The Sunil troops quickly changed their formation and prepared to take the brunt of the attack. Boom! A black flood surged out from the various tunnels. The number of subterranean mutants in Nest Number 2 had reached tens of millions, and the ground shook nonstop. At this time, Haluz finally opened his mouth, and his voice was like thunder. Black Star mercenaries, fire at will. Hundreds of thousands of players charged out, and the crowd lit up with colorful lights. Boom! The two floods collided, and the war broke out. At the same time, Han Xiao and Fu Ding came to the Sunil Research Department and borrowed the dozen or so subterranean mutants that they had captured alive. The dozen or so subterranean mutants were locked up separately, and they were not allowed to come into contact with each other. A small pile of prophecy stones was placed in the middle to provide them with telepathy. "You're the expert, so I'll leave it to you." Han Xiao extended his hand and made a pleased gesture. Fu Ding smiled and released his psychic power to touch the prophecy stones. The subterranean mutants used the prophecy stones as a communication base, which was equivalent to a server. As long as a psychic adjusted his psychic wave to the frequency of the subterranean mutants, he would be able to log into the chat channel of these dozen or so subterranean mutants. After adjusting for a while, Fu Ding's eyes sparkled. Success. As soon as he said that, Fu Ding's expression became weird. "What's wrong?" Han Xiao raised his brows. It's different from what I imagined." Fu Ding had a weird expression. "Accept my telepathic link, and I'll pull you in too." Han Xiao nodded. He felt that Fu Ding was trying to connect to his mind, so he did not reject it. The moment he accepted it, his vision suddenly split into two. One side was the real world, and the other side was a white space that seemed to have no end. This was the space of the mental network, and he could cut off the link at any time. The subterranean mutants and Fu Ding were inside, and their positions were the same as in the real world. Their appearances were blurry, and only their silhouettes could be seen. Before Han Xiao could come back to his senses, the dozen or so subterranean mutants started chattering through their psychic waves. "Wow, another one of our kind is here. Why do you all look different? You're too ugly." Han Xiao was stunned. He did not expect the subterranean mutants to treat him as one of their kind. With their cognitive level, they probably thought that everyone who could log into the mental network was one of their kind. After chattering for a while, the group of subterranean mutants' attention quickly shifted, and they started chatting with each other. "Why are we locked up?" "I don't know. Also, you asked this question before. Those long creatures are so weird. They actually feed us and take away our feces." "Haha, I understand now. It's because our feces are the food of those creatures. So that's how it is. I understand now. So, the more we poop, the more they feed us. That's sick. There are actually creatures that eat feces." "Hee hee, I just pooped a huge pile of feces. I'll definitely be full for my next meal." "Wow, that's amazing. What the F***CK is this?" Han Zhao's mouth twitched. From the perspective of the subterranean mutants, this conclusion was really reasonable. Chapter 612. Although the scene was very different from what he had imagined, Han Xiao still managed to get a lot of information from it. The subterranean mutants had a certain level of logic and intelligence, but their cognitive abilities were still in an undeveloped stage. After trying for a while, the mental link that Fu Ding had established was able to communicate with the subterranean mutants normally. After getting the result, Han Xiao cut off the mental link. Communicating through the prophecy stones is possible. If we use the mind, we should be able to communicate with a nest at the same time, Fu Ding said. Then, let's find a nest and try. Han Xiao nodded. With a flash of inspiration, he had a target. Underground world, nest number 2, the smell of blood was thick and did not dissipate. Blood covered everything as far as the eye could see. It was a scene of a massacre. Many players' faces turned pale. This scene was too impactful. Even though they had completed quite a few small objectives of eliminate subterranean mutants, they could not be happy. They could not help but turn on their green eye protection mode. Only the senile soldiers were indifferent. They were used to seeing hellish disasters and were unmoved. They had also suffered casualties in the battle earlier, and most of their armor was covered in scratches. Haluz led the troops forward step by step and destroyed nest number 2, killing millions of mutants. The remaining mutants fled in fear, taking a portion of the prophecy stone mine with them. The logistics team was mining the prophecy stones in the center of the nest, and the rest of the troops were guarding the place to prevent the escaping mutants from returning. They also used flamethrowers to burn the subterranean mutant corpses on the ground. Haluz hugged the battleship's slicing blade and rested at the side. He had led the charge earlier like a moving meat grinder, killing tens of thousands of subterranean mutants. His strength was far from Han Xiao's, and he had used up a lot of stamina. After a while, a sergeant ran over and gave a military salute. The mining of the mine is complete. Commander, please instruct us on the next step. Return to the temporary camp and replenish our ammunition. Although the subterranean mutants were not strong, there were too many of them. Clearing one nest at a time had already used up 60 to 70% of their ammunition, and the players were all injured. If they continued to attack the next nest, the casualties would increase significantly. Haluz decided to return to the camp to rest for a few hours. The troops set off and returned to the temporary camp beside the cave. Haluz suddenly saw 2 figures appear beside the camp. They were Han Xiao and Fu Ding. "Why are you here?" Haluz walked up to him with a surprised expression. Han Xiao did not answer the question. Instead, he looked at the troops and asked, "How are the casualties?" "There are very few casualties, but..." Haluz had a troubled expression. "This is only the first battle. There are still many subterranean mutant nests around the world, so the casualty rate is not optimistic. Sunil's casualties will be very heavy, so we can only rely on our mercenaries to fight." The mine detector created by Reynolds was already in use. Han Xiao deployed dozens of spaceships of the army to scan the entire planet, and the efficiency was very high. In just a few days, they had already discovered dozens of underground mines in different locations on planet Sunil, all nests. The nests were of varying sizes. The largest had a population of 10 million, while the smallest had a population of 1 million. The total number of subterranean mutants was in the billions. Thinking of the huge number of enemies, Haluz could not help but have a heavy heart. Furthermore, the locations of the other nests were different, and many places had to be rebuilt. Without the undying Black Star mercenaries, it would be impossible for the Sunils to wipe out the subterranean mutants. Only the Black Star Corps could do it. Han Xiaoxi knew what Haluz was thinking. He briefly explained the migration plan and said, "I'm here this time to try to communicate with the subterranean mutants. If I can convince some of them and let them convince each other, we can get rid of many of the enemies." Haluz's eyes sparkled. If he could reduce the casualties while chasing away the subterranean mutants, he was very willing to do so. He could not help but ask, "Do I need to change my strategy?" "No. You continue to attack the nests of the mutants, but don't chase after the ones that escaped. Plant the seed of fear in their hearts so that it will be easier to convince them," Han Xiao said slowly. Compared to just killing, the efficiency of pulling in batches was naturally higher. After leaving the camp, Han Xiao and Han Xiaoxin went all the way to nest number 2, which had been wiped out. Following the escape route, they caught up with the remaining mutants that were fleeing in panic. This tribe had suffered heavy casualties. When they discovered Han Xiao and Han Xiaoxin, a battle was unavoidable. However, they were not a threat to Han Xiao at all. Releasing the giant mechanical hands, Han Xiao and Fu Ding opened up a path for themselves. They approached the prophecy stones that these mutants were carrying and invaded the mental network of the mutants. The next moment, all the attacking mutants stopped at the same time. If they could make an expression, it would be one of confusion. In their knowledge, only those of the same race had the ability to connect telepathically. However, Han Xiao had just killed a bunch of mutants, and he was not one of their kind. The current situation confused this uncivilized subterranean mutant tribe. Who are you? In the mental network, countless xenogeneics were shocked. I'm Black Star, the emissary from the stars. Han Zhao's eyes flashed, and he quickly introduced the situation. However, he made some appropriate changes. He threw the responsibility of slaughtering the subterranean mutants to the Sunils. Han Xiao made the Sunils into the role of the devil, and he made himself out to be a friendly emissary who was willing to help the subterranean mutants and could persuade the Sunils to give up on slaughtering them. He claimed that he could protect them from being slaughtered under the condition that they surrendered and moved out of this planet with the prophecy stones. In order to let the subterranean mutants understand the situation, Han Xiao even taught them basic knowledge about the universe and the stars. At the same time, he also used threats and promises. The communication efficiency of the mental network was extremely high. Everyone in this tribe was in a state of confusion, as if they were listening to a book from heaven. What Han Xiao said was the most basic knowledge to the galactic residents, but it overturned the worldview of the subterranean mutants. It was like a myth. In their eyes, the subterranean mutants were the entire world. The universe and the stars were completely beyond their knowledge. The subterranean mutants looked at the enemies from the surface the same way the Sunils looked at them. They all felt that the enemies were dangerous. An subterranean mutant that seemed to be the leader of the tribe initiated a conversation. We are willing to surrender. Please don't hurt us anymore. Almost all the mutants knelt on the ground and made a gesture of submission. The tribe leader's attitude was very respectful and humble. The knowledge that Han Xiao said was too shocking to them. Due to their uncivilized nature, they could not help but treat Han Xiao as a godlike figure and worship him as a primitive totem. Han Xiao raised his brows. It was much easier to convince them than he had imagined. Thinking about it, he realized that the intelligence of the subterranean mutants was similar to that of a child. Their civilization was not developed yet, so they did not have any high-level emotions such as honor or shame. Their concept of hatred was also very weak. The subterranean mutants had yet to break away from their beast nature. When a beast was scared, they would show their weakness and surrender. This tribe had a large number of its own kind killed by Halus, so they were already scared. That was because the subterranean mutants had almost no natural enemies. Their food was rocks, so they did not have any conflicts. They had lived and bred for many years and rarely experienced battles. At most, they would have conflicts with other nests. If one had to describe them, this species was actually very simple. It was just that they were too ugly. It was probably because it was too dark underground and no one could see them, so they just grew up casually. With the foundation of communication, it was possible to understand the structure of the subterranean mutant civilization. Han Xiao asked a few questions, and through the other party's answers, he had a comprehensive understanding of the subterranean mutants. The subterranean mutants knew that there were nests of their own kind nearby, so they would occasionally fight with each other to fight for the prophecy stones. From their social structure, the subterranean mutants were currently in the tribal stage of the barbarian era. Every tribe grew independently, and different tribes had different degrees of evolution. Some were more intelligent, while others were more barbaric. Their culture was budding and blooming. If they followed the original path, the subterranean mutants might need many years to complete the merger of their tribes and gradually become an intelligent civilization, building a city or kingdom. Now that they had an external force like Han Xiao, their development process might be shortened by thousands of years. What do we need to do? The tribe leader asked obediently. Han Xiao thought for a while and said, "Convince all the tribes in this area and convey my message. From now on, you're my emissary. If you complete the mission I give you, go to the underground cave and look for the surface guests. They will not harm you. Wow, that's great. They won't attack us anymore. The entire tribe was overjoyed, and they chattered nonstop. It was as if they were a bunch of optimists. After making sure that the tribe understood their mission, Han Xiao was about to leave when he suddenly realized something. He asked the tribe leader, "Right, what's your name?" "What's a name?" The tribe leader was puzzled. Han Xiao was helpless and could only explain, "It's a form of address. Let others know that this form of address represents you. For example, I'm Black Star, and Black Star is me." The tribe leader seemed to have understood. "Sigh. All right, I'll give you a name." Han Xiao glanced at Fu Ding beside him and suddenly had an idea. "You're so good-looking. Let's call you Qin Xing." Fu Ding's spiritual energy fluctuated violently, and the Chun Xing in his body let out a deafening roar. "I'll definitely kill you. Do you hear me? I'll definitely kill you." The subterranean mutant had such an ugly appearance, but had the same name as her. Qin Xing was very ambiguous. This was something she could not tolerate. Fu Ding had a helpless expression. "Black Star, stop playing with her. Tis TSK, as expected of one. You're already protecting her." Han Xiao pursed his lips and said to the tribe leader, "That's invalid. You'll be called Germinal." "Huh." No one would jump out of their coffins to oppose him. "Germinal," the tribe leader mumbled and suddenly became happy. "I have a name. As for your tribe," Han Xiao stroked his chin, and a look of nostalgia flashed across his eyes. "Let's just call it Germinal Tribe." "Wait, isn't this guy the Germinal leader?" Chapter 613. Using the Germinal tribe to convince their own kind was very effective. There were 5 nests in this area. One of them was scared away by Han Xiao, and the Germinal tribe surrendered. Over the next few days, Haluz destroyed the remaining 3 nests, and the Germinal tribe persuaded the remaining mutants of the 3 tribes to relay Han Xiao's message. With this 2-pronged approach, the efficiency was much higher than just killing, and the entire area was cleared out efficiently. This made the Sunil soldiers very surprised. They did not expect the legendary Black Star to be able to do such a thing. The result of the operation made them completely convinced of Han Xiaoxin. There was no need to waste time chasing after the escaping mutants. The deserters of the 3 tribes were all persuaded by the Germinal tribe and surrendered with their own prophecy stone base stations. This saved them a lot of energy and prevented more casualties. Hundreds of thousands of players started a heated discussion about this. After discovering that the subterranean mutants had a certain level of intelligence, a portion of the players started to express different opinions about this massacre. There were all kinds of opinions. Many players agreed with Han Zhao's method of persuading the subterranean mutants to surrender, but such players were in the minority. Most of them were players who liked the storyline very much. At first, only a small number of players were discussing this topic. Most of the players were just there to do the mission and did not think so much. However, as more and more discussion threads appeared, more and more players could not help but express their opinions. They started to be dragged into the topic, and it gradually became more and more popular. Most of the players were used to feeling sympathy for the weaker party. After witnessing such a cruel massacre, many of the players couldn't bear to see it. Although the subterranean mutants looked a little disgusting, after looking at them for a long time, they were actually quite good-looking. They did not even have eyes or eyebrows. It would be a miracle if they were good-looking. In any case, sympathy was one thing, but when it came to killing monsters, the players would not go soft. On the other hand, the name Germinal Tribe made all the players laugh like pigs. They understood this point. These players had all experienced the events of version 1.0, and the Germinal organization had left a deep impression on them. They could not help but joke about it on the forums. Germinal, "Coach, I want to eat boxed meals." Germinal, "Now that things have come to this, I can't hide it anymore. It's time to open the coffin and rise. I'd rather have the guts." Shocking. In fact, the Germinal organization is the real boss. It is a mysterious organization at the universal level. The one in the Blue Star organization is just one of its clones. This huge organization has been hiding for billions of years, and what we have come into contact with is just the tip of the iceberg. Germinal, detected Has my alternate account been exposed again? I understand now. This is the inheritance of faith. We must spread the seeds of revolution throughout the universe and sprout immortality. My spirit lives on forever. The germinal organization of the kingdom of heaven silently watched you and gave you a thumbs up. Keep bragging. Germinal is very satisfied. The presence of the germinal tribe made the heavy atmosphere much more cheerful. In this area, only the last tribe that had escaped had not been dealt with. Herluz led the troops and followed the route of the escaping tribe, while the surrendered subterranean mutants of the germinal tribe used their digging skills to open a path. Under the guidance of the radar, they found the new underground nest of this tribe. This time, there was no battle. The leader of the germinal tribe contacted the leader of the escaping tribe through the prophecy stone and conveyed Han Zhao's message. This escaping tribe actually did not resist. When the germinal organization outlined Han Zhao's figure, this tribe instantly recognized him. Han Zhao was the source of their escape and left them with a psychological trauma. This tribe was very timid. As soon as the germinal organization mentioned Han Zhao, they did not hesitate much. The members of the tribe quickly reached a consensus on the mental network and directly clicked on surrender. This was the first time a problem had been solved without a battle. Herluz felt that Han Zhao's decision was really wise. The 5 nests in this area were cleared. Herluz led the troops out of the underground, and there were more areas that needed to be cleared. As for how to deal with these surrendered subterranean mutants, that became a problem. Herluz asked for instructions from Han Zhao. Han Zhao's meaning was very simple. Because there were too many subterranean mutants, and they were unwilling to come to the surface, the cost of guarding them was too high. Therefore, most of the subterranean mutants would stay in their original areas and wait. The 5 tribes would live together and set up some surveillance equipment to monitor the movements of the surrendered subterranean mutants. Then, the subjugation force brought some of the subterranean mutants, including the leader of the germinal tribe, to other areas to continue the persuasion work. Herluz had a taste of the benefits of pulling batches and did not have any objections. In the following days, the subjugation force kept using this strategy. All the underground mines on planet Senil were finally detected by Reynolds. There were a total of 127 subterranean mutant nests, which were roughly divided into 41 main gathering areas. The subjugation force cleared almost half of the mutant gathering areas on planet Senil. After counting, the number of subterranean mutants that had been persuaded to surrender reached 1.7 billion. The number of slaughtered subterranean mutants was not calculated, but it could only be more. The method of persuading them to surrender was not always successful. The mutant tribes were relatively independent, and the development of each area was different. There were always some barbaric tribes that were even more uncivilized and did not understand at all. The germinal tribe was persuading them here, but there was no way for them to communicate normally. The only way to deal with them was to kill them all. All the players clear the subterranean mutants' main storyline mission had a lot of rewards. Han Zhao saw this and felt sweet in his heart. Seeing that the players were doing well, he did not stay idle either. During this time, he kept on harvesting the players' experience in wallets. His experience storage was slowly approaching the 10 billion mark. The experience required to level up in the future would be astronomical. He had to work hard to harvest leaks. The subjugation operation was on the right track, and base number 3 was finally completed. A brand new, magnificent black star base had taken root on planet Sunil. The players all gave good reviews and felt proud. Han Zhao did not encounter any problems, and he did not need Han Zhao to do anything personally. He had plenty of time to complete the equipment of base number 3. This time, he was no longer alone. As his assistant, Reynolds helped a lot. The two of them worked together and quickly built the military factory of base number 3. Reynolds' personality was too serious, and it made people feel uncomfortable. However, when it came to work, this kind of personality was perfect. Han Zhao was very satisfied with Reynolds' ability to work. Perfect mechanical sense played a huge role. Han Zhao had been drooling over this talent for a long time. This time, he had enough time to interact with Reynolds. He tried all sorts of methods to trigger Reynolds' mission, but to no avail. Han Xiao was helpless. Facing the stubborn Reynolds, he did not know how to get Reynolds' perfect mechanical sense, molding talent. Han Xiao did know some non-molding talents of the mechanic series, such as basic mechanical sense, precise mechanical sense, and so on. Naturally, their effects were far inferior to perfect mechanical sense, but he wanted to get one to make up the numbers. He was a mechanic, after all, and it would not make sense if he did not have a mechanic talent. Looking at the series of tank talents on his interface, those who did not know him would think that he was a main tank. It was a pity that the location to obtain the mechanical sense talent was a little far away and not in this star cluster. Han Xiao did not have the time to go there. Yi Yeching finally had some results on her side. She had researched a biochemical weapon specifically targeting the body structure and genes of the subterranean mutants. It had a large-scale infectious effect. After getting sick, the subterranean mutants would slowly become weak. Their mouths and shells would gradually peel off, and their stomach and esophagus would become infected. In the end, they would not be able to eat, and they would either die of illness or starvation. The cycle would last for about 10 days. Based on the current situation, there was no need to use the biochemical weapon. Their goal had already changed from extermination to migration. However, since there were already results from the research, Han Xiao still gave Haluz a certain amount of biochemical weapons for him to use. At least this way, he would have a method to kill the subterranean mutants on a large scale, which would increase the efficiency of the crusade. On the second day after the biochemical weapon was developed, the Sunil upper echelon Otis suddenly paid a visit. In the guest room of base number 3, the two of them sat opposite each other. This is truly a majestic base. Otis was the first to speak. His tone was fawning, but his eyes were filled with envy. In just a short period of time, Black Star had built a breathtaking base. The connections and wealth he had indirectly displayed were far beyond the reach of the current Sunil. Otis could not help but be envious. It's passable. Han Xiao crossed his legs, tapped his thigh with his finger, and slowly said, "Everything is normal in the crusade operation. Is there anything else you need from me today?" Otis sat up straight and said with a deep voice, "Your Excellency Black Star, we would like to make a suggestion. You are the employer. You have the authority. Your plan is very effective. Many subterranean mutants have been gathered. I think this is a good opportunity to use the biochemical weapon to kill all the subterranean mutants at once." Han Xiao paused and looked at Otis. This guy wants to use the current results of the Black Star Corps to achieve his own goal? Otis subconsciously looked away and avoided eye contact. He then felt that there was no need for him to be afraid. Black Star was a mercenary that they had hired, and, as the employer, they naturally had the right to make requests. Thus, he gathered his courage and looked at Han Xiao. "Those subterranean mutants have already surrendered, and I will move them to other planets. You want me to give up on this plan and insist on exterminating them?" Han Xiao raised his brows. "Yes." Otis nodded. "Interesting. Moving the subterranean mutants is my own expense. You don't need to bear the cost. So, tell me the reason." Otis was silent for a while and avoided the question. "I think this is a very reasonable request. We are the employer, and we hope that you can carry out the mission according to our wishes. At the very least, you can save on the cost of moving them." Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Indeed, mercenaries work according to the employer's request, but we have the right to make our own decisions. Your real goal is to control planet Sunil. In my eyes, exterminating an entire race is not the best plan. Although I am a mercenary, it does not mean that I have to carry out all the orders of my employer. I have a right to reject any request that I think is not legitimate. If you do not have a reason to do this, let's forget about this matter." Seeing how resolute Han Xiao was, Otis clenched his teeth and told Han Xiao the real reason for his visit. "If we don't eliminate all future problems, what if the subterranean mutants develop on other planets and attack us when they want to take back planet Sunil? If you don't kill them all, can you guarantee that such a thing will not happen in the future? You really want to eliminate the source of the problem?" Han Zhao's eyes flashed, and he said, "Indeed, I cannot guarantee that the subterranean mutants will not be a future problem." Otis heaved a sigh of relief. "So, please," this time, Han Xiao suddenly interrupted him and chuckled. "But even if they're a future problem, it is different from the current mission. Will they attack Sunil in the future? Huh, what does it have to do with me?" Otis was stunned and was about to explode in anger. However, he remembered that Han Xiao was someone he could not afford to offend, so he could only suppress his anger and say, with a more serious tone, "Since you are a mercenary, you should at least follow the professional ethics. How can you say such things? We hired you in the hope that you can solve our problem." "That's right. Isn't the Black Star Corps helping you solve your problem now? What else do you think we are doing?" Han Xiao smiled mockingly. "Mercenaries are not nannies. You spend money and we contribute. This is a transaction, but it does not mean that we will be responsible for your future forever. Even if the subterranean mutants attack, that is another matter. Let's not talk about how many years it takes for the subterranean mutants to develop the ability to counterattack. Now that Sunil has no obstacles, won't they develop? If a battle really breaks out in the future, you can hire me then." Han Xiao crossed his arms and had an expression that said, "What can you do if I am being unreasonable?" Otis' eyes widened, and he was speechless. There's actually such a shameless person in the world? Of course, if you want me to eliminate all the subterranean mutants, it is not impossible. Han Xiao suddenly changed the topic. Otis' hope was reignited. "But," Han Xiao revealed a cunning smile and rubbed his fingers. "You have to pay more." Otis' veins bulged, and he clenched his fists tightly. If not for the fact that he could not afford to offend Black Star, he would have flipped the table. Chapter 614. Since you Sunils think that the subterranean mutants are a threat, then pay a price to get rid of them. Han Xiao shook his finger. "Let me remind you, strictly speaking, those subterranean mutants that surrendered are my captives and spoils of war. If you want me to abandon my spoils of war, you have to pay at least something of equivalent value." He was certain that Sunil would not increase the price, so this was a tactful rejection. Since they had decided to migrate, there was no way they could change it to a massacre. Otherwise, it would be equivalent to lying to Fu Ding, and the favorability of the goddess of luck would plummet. Furthermore, going back on his words would not be beneficial to establishing the image of the Black Star Corps in the hearts of the players. Otis' face turned green and white. He really wanted to get rid of the subterranean mutants, but he was extremely unwilling when he thought about the high price he would have to pay. Our Sunil's financial situation is not optimistic. We have already spent a lot of our savings to hire you this time. Our people have been through a lot, and we cannot take any more risks. This is nothing to you." Otis did not give up. As the right-hand man of the Sunil leader, he was like a buffer between the two sides. Thus, although he could see that Han Xiao was trying to beat around the bush, he still pretended that he did not understand what Han Xiao meant and poured out his grievances. Hearing this, Han Xiao also lost his patience, and his smile disappeared. He stared at Otis and said with a heavy tone, "Your financial situation is not optimistic? Don't forget, if I did not give you a discount, you would not have been able to afford to hire me." Otis was shocked. What does the plight of the Sunils have to do with me? If not for Haluz, do you think I would care about your life and death? Otis was speechless. Everything that had happened so far was all thanks to Haluz, and he could not deny it. Han Zhao's eyes were like torches, and his tone was firm. "Don't take my kindness as capital for you to push your luck. This could already be considered a warning." The atmosphere became tense. You misunderstood," Otis hurriedly explained, and his palms were sweating. He did not dare have a conflict with Han Xiao. "In any case, I do not wish to hear the suggestion of exterminating my race a second time." Han Xiao waved his hand. "Sylvia, send him out." The door opened. Sylvia was expressionless. "Please come with me." "Your Excellency Black Star, you've really misunderstood." Seeing Han Zhao's cold expression, Otis could only stop talking. He didn't dare to explain too much and followed behind Sylvia. When he reached the door, he turned around and bade farewell. "I'm very sorry to have disturbed you." "Yes." Han Xiao waved his hand and watched Otis leave. He couldn't help curling his lips. "In your dreams, You're not willing to pay the price and want others to be the bad guy. How can there be such a good thing in the world? This was a private meeting, so Han Xiao was not worried that it would affect the relationship between the two parties. Sunil had a favor to ask of him, so they did not dare to do anything behind his back. However, he never had high hopes for any politician. As long as the other party fulfilled the terms of the deal, he did not care how they looked at him. Han Xiao thought for a moment, then took out his communicator and contacted the two financial groups. Halfway through the mission, it was time to start preparing for the migration. Migrating 2 to 3 billion subterranean mutants was a huge project, and it required a large number of spaceships. With the help of the financial groups, things would be much easier. Underground World, Nest number 77. Nest number 77 was the largest subterranean mutant tribe so far. In the entire gathering area, only Nest number 77 occupied this area. There were no other tribes, and this was the new target of the subjugation force. According to the radar, Nest number 77 had a population of 30 to 40 million. Even Haluz did not dare act rashly. He used the old method of getting the traitor Germinal tribe to negotiate and try to persuade Nest number 77. The Germinal tribe leader brought some of his tribesmen and approached Nest number 77. When they realized that there were guards at the edge of the nest, they stopped them. After expressing their intentions, the Germinal tribe connected to the mental network and met the leader of this tribe. I am the Germinal tribe, Black Star's envoy. I am Sulusu, the leader of the New Rock tribe. It is a pleasure to talk to you. The other party replied quickly with a friendly attitude. The Germinal tribe was overjoyed. That's great. You have a name too. It had persuaded so many tribes to surrender, but this was the first one that had a name. Sulusalu was also very happy. Our guest was not wrong. There are indeed other tribes in the world. The subterranean mutant tribes were more independent, and the evolution of the New Rock tribe was far more advanced than the other tribes. However, the Germinal tribe leader did not understand the meaning behind this. Sulusalu introduced the history of the tribe to the Germinal tribe. Originally, there were 4 nests in this area. Under the leadership of my ancestor's ancestor, we engaged in an intense battle with the other tribes. In the end, we swallowed the other 3 tribes and merged into the New Rock tribe. We lived here, multiplied, and always believed that there were other species like us in the world. Today, we have finally found one of our own. This is a major discovery. Sulusalu was very excited. The Germinal tribe leader was mesmerized. This was the first time he had heard a historical story. If Han Xiao was there, he would know that the civilization of the New Rock tribe had reached a whole new level. They had the concept of history, knew how to record, and learn how to pass down knowledge. Their thinking ability and emotional expression were also evolving away from the habits of wild beasts and toward an intelligent species. If they followed the normal path of development, in time, the New Rock tribe might have a chance to unify the subterranean mutants. When it was the Germinal tribe leader's turn to speak, he did not forget Black Star's instructions. He conveyed the meaning of the threat to persuade them to surrender and popularize the basic knowledge of the universe that Han Xiao had taught him. However, after Sulusalu heard this, not only was he not afraid, he was furious. This is our home. We will never leave. The information brought by the Germinal tribe was far beyond Sulusalu's imagination. However, the New Rock tribe had already developed a sense of home. In the face of an enemy that was wantonly slaughtering their own tribe, they chose to resist. In the mental network, the members of the New Rock tribe were united against a common enemy. This gave the Germinal tribe a shock. It did not understand why this tribe was suddenly so agitated. It still did not understand the concept of hatred. Emissary of Black Star, thank you for your kindness, but we have decided to resist to the end. Sulusalu's attitude was firm. Han Zhao's positioning of himself was effective. In the eyes of the mutants, he was a good person who stopped the evil Sunil and saved the mutants. As the emissary of Black Star, the Germinal tribe had the mission of saving their own people. Thus, Sulusalu did not make things difficult for the Germinal tribe and sent them away from the New Rock tribe. Returning to the temporary camp, The Germinal tribe leader conveyed the new rock tribe's intention of not surrendering. Haluz had no choice but to lead the troops to attack the new rock tribe. The number of enemies weighed heavily on his heart, almost 100 times the size of the crusade troops. It was yet another crusade. The Sunil soldiers and players had already repeated it many times and were already numb to it. The only difference was that the crusade against the new rock tribe was even more intense. 222. The scorching steel bullets pierced through the bodies of the subterranean mutants, blooming blood flowers. Countless mutants fell in the path of the charge, but the new rock tribe's mutants seemed to be endless, surging forward like a tide. A Sunil armored squad was in charge of this line of defense. Their fingers were tightly pressed on the trigger, not caring that the barrels of the large-caliber assault rifles had overheated. The ammunition boxes beside their feet were emptied at an extremely fast speed, and the ground was covered with bullet casings. At this time, a wave of elites that were 2 to 3 times larger than normal subterranean mutants appeared at the line of defense this squad was in charge of. The antennae on their heads swayed, and a wave of psychic energy quickly crossed the distance, ignoring the protection of the armor, and pierced into the brains of these armored soldiers. A few Sunil soldiers felt as if their brains were being sliced into pieces. Blood spurted out from their mouths and noses, and the world spun before their eyes. They lost control of their bodies, and the firepower of the line of defense instantly stopped. The result was fatal. The subterranean mutants that acted as the vanguard charged into this line of defense and drowned this armored squad. Their tails and mouths left dazzling sparks on the armor, and the tough armor quickly shattered. Behind this line of defense were even more Sunil soldiers. Swoosh! At this time, a bright crescent-shaped knife light came. Hundreds of Xenogeneics were cut in half by that one slash. Haluz dragged the 10-meter-long battleship slicing blade and quickly rushed over. He slashed and killed countless subterranean mutants, stopping the attack and resolving the danger of this line of defense. The original armored squad was almost completely wiped out, and the backup squad quickly replaced the original squad to guard this line of defense. Haluz wiped the blood and sweat off his face. He did not have time to rest and was about to return to his original position. When he passed through the line of defense, he subconsciously looked at the armored squad that had fallen on the ground. The armor was riddled with holes, and the soldiers inside were disemboweled. With just one look, Haluz suddenly felt that one of the dead soldiers looked very familiar. He slowed down and took a closer look. This soldier was covered in blood, and his eyes were wide open. He held an armored dagger tightly in his hand and pierced through the body of a mutant. It was as if he had died together with the enemy, but he still looked very young. Haluz suddenly recalled that this young soldier who had died was the child of a neighbor when he was still opening a bar in Forest City. His name seemed to be Lana. Who would have thought that this child had also joined the army? Memories surfaced like bubbles in boiling water. Haluz's face twitched, and he shook off the distracting thoughts. He shouted and continued to fight. For the first time, the expedition was defeated by the subterranean mutants. The scale of a new rock tribe was too large, and the enemies were endless. Even after killing a large number of mutants, the new rock tribe did not run away like the other nests. Instead, they became even more violent and fearless. The tactics of the new rock tribe were even more varied. They made use of their advantage of digging underground. The underground was their home ground. They would dig tunnels from the top or bottom of the underground space and directly kill their way into the expedition. With the help of the mental network, the new rock tribe's cooperation was organized and very difficult to deal with. The casualties of the expedition continued to rise, and even many players died 2 or 3 times. Everyone was exhausted. Haluz finally decided to strategically retreat and return to the temporary camp. However, the new rock tribe pursued them all the way to the temporary camp. Haluz led his troops to resist for a while, but he really could not hold on any longer. He had no choice but to retreat again and again, returning to the surface through the underground tunnel and being forced out of the underground world by the new rock tribe. The sun was high in the sky. After the expedition retreated from the underground, the new rock tribe did not continue to pursue. The subterranean mutants hated the sun, and many of them were sunburned. Thus, they did not rush to the surface and retreated. The new rock tribe completely used their lives to force the expedition to retreat. The ratio of casualties on both sides was extremely exaggerated. Because the expedition had retreated in an emergency, many of their companions' corpses were left underground. Haluz had a heavy heart. He let the troops rest and count the casualties while he contacted Han Shao and reported the situation here. "You were defeated by the subterranean mutants?" Han Shao had a strange expression. "There are too many enemies. Using battle methods to clear Nest 77 can only be done slowly. Our casualties are also very high." Haluz clenched his teeth. "Black Star, I hope to use biochemical weapons to avoid casualties." "Do as you see fit." Han Shao shook his head and hung up. Haluz took a deep breath. The corpses of the young warriors kept appearing in front of his eyes, and he did not hesitate anymore. He called the officer of the logistics team over, looked at the other party's bloodstained face, and said with a deep voice, "Send people to release all the biochemical weapons. Execute immediately." "Understood." The officer saluted without hesitation. The people of the new rock tribe dragged their tired bodies back to the nest and cleaned up the battlefield. They collected the corpses of their own kind, which piled up into many small mountains. In the mental network, the tribe members were communicating nonstop. The battle earlier had a huge impact on them. A large number of their tribesmen had died, which made them feel fear, anger, and hatred. However, at the same time, there were also cheers of victory. They had defeated the strong enemy and successfully defended their homeland. Although the tribe had suffered heavy casualties, Solu was full of fighting spirit. The experience passed down from their ancestors told them that they had to pursue the enemy while they were victorious. If they defeated the enemy once, the enemy might come back again. The true victory was to take down the enemy's nest. The many subterranean mutants collected the corpses of the Sunil soldiers, and an old subterranean mutant walked out from the crowd. The surrounding tribe members all bowed down to show respect. This subterranean mutant was an anomaly in the tribe. It could read the memories of the dead. In the entire new rock tribe, it was the only one with such an ability. If Han Shao was here, he would know that this was a native Esper who had awakened naturally. The tentacles on its head touched the heads of the Sunil soldiers one by one. All kinds of memory fragments flashed and quickly reorganized into the information it wanted. Then, it shared the memory images in the mental network. This was the image of Forest City in the Sunil's memories, as well as the map of planet Sunil. The nest of the surface creatures is also on the surface. What a strange nest. The enemy is on the surface. How do we find them? The members of the new rock tribe communicated in the mental network. Chapter 6:15. More than 10 days later, the subjugation army took some time to return to nest number 77. Haluz led his men to investigate the underground. The new rock tribe had already become a dead zone, and the corpses of the subterranean mutants were all over the underground world. Even the strong-willed Sunil soldiers could not help but gasp at the hellish scene. Many players were shaken and could not help but sympathize with them. Haluz had a heavy heart. He ordered his men to destroy the prophecy stone mine of the new rock tribe, then collected the corpses of the subterranean mutants and burned them all. They also found the corpses of their fallen comrades. After clearing out the new rock tribe, the subjugation operation became much smoother. There were no more powerful nests like the new rock tribe. They continued to fight batch after batch, and the results were remarkable. After a long battle outside, the last subterranean mutant nest finally surrendered, and Haluz and the others finally returned victorious. Morning, light rain. Outside Forest City, almost all the Sunils had walked out of the city. There was a sea of people waiting in the rain to welcome the victorious troops. Everyone was looking forward to it. More than 10 spaceships flew over from the distant mountains, broke through the rain, and landed outside the city. The hatch opened, and the Sunil soldiers disembarked. They were not wearing armor, but simple military uniforms. Their faces were filled with unconcealable fatigue. The players, on the other hand, were in a better state. Haluz walked out of the spaceship, came to the front of the group, and led the subjugation army toward the crowd. Hero! All of a sudden, countless Sunils burst into cheers and swarmed toward them. Every civilian had excitement, and gratitude on their faces as they welcomed this expedition team that was fighting in the outside world. Haluz was surrounded by countless people. As far as he could see, there were countless faces filled with gratitude. Everyone who looked at him had unparalleled respect in their eyes, causing him to be slightly dazed. The Sunils already knew that the Black Star Corps was willing to lend a helping hand because of Haluz. In the eyes of all the Sunils, Haluz had already surpassed everyone and became the undisputed hero. He was the idol of every Sunil. The crowd cheered and praised the soldiers of the subjugation army, including the players. To be precise, the Sunils were grateful to the Black Star Corps. In the hearts of the Sunils, Han Shao had already become a savior, and the reputation of the Black Star Corps was incomparable. Thank you so much. You saved Sunil. Black Star Corps, you are our benefactors. Countless people surrounded the players and expressed their gratitude. Many players were stunned for a moment before they felt a strange sense of fulfillment. They felt that this mission had an extraordinary meaning. Their collective actions had changed the future of the Sunils, which was why they had received so much gratitude. This sense of accomplishment gave many people a different experience. They felt fulfilled and satisfied. This feeling had nothing to do with benefits, but it was a spiritual satisfaction. Many young soldiers reunited with their families. Facing their families who were crying tears of joy, these iron-blooded soldiers showed satisfied smiles on their tired faces. They hugged each other and comforted their families who were crying tears of joy. Parents welcomed their children, wives welcomed their husbands, and children welcomed their fathers. This heartwarming scene played out continuously. Every day, the families of the soldiers were in fear, afraid that they would receive a death notice one day. Now, everything was finally over. There would be no more catastrophes and no more sacrifices in war. There was no need to despair, no need to worry, and a beautiful tomorrow awaited them. The gloomy period was over, and the Sunils saw the light of the future. The days of peace and tranquility had finally arrived. Looking at the smiling faces of their compatriots, many Sunils felt comforted. For their families and compatriots behind them, everything they had done was worth it. However, not everyone was happy. One official after another passed the boxes containing the ashes of the dead soldiers to their family members with heavy expressions. Some people could not believe it, some argued loudly, some hugged the ashes and cried, and some looked at the ashes in a daze. These families of the dead soldiers formed a stark contrast with the cheering crowd. Even the drizzle became sad, and the temperature in the morning seemed to have dropped a little. Lana's parents held his ashes and knelt in the mud as if they had lost their souls. Haluz happened to see this scene. He went forward to help Lana's parents up and said softly, "He is the hero of the race." Lana's parents looked at him and did not say anything. Seeing this, Haluz knew that any consolation would be futile. He pursed his lips, turned around, and walked away, clenching his fists. The Sunils had experienced too many life and death situations. Luckily, this should be the last time. Looking up, he saw Han Shao standing outside the crowd with the army officers. Haluz calmed himself down and walked over. It's finally over. Only one last step, and this mission will be completed. Seeing him walk closer, Han Shao spoke. Haluz stared at Han Shao and suddenly bowed solemnly. With a hoarse voice, he said, "I thank you on behalf of the entire Sunil race. There's no need for such a big reaction. I'm just fulfilling my promise to you." Han Shao helplessly reached out to help Haluz. Unexpectedly, Haluz insisted on not moving, and his tone was extremely serious. "No, please listen to what I have to say." Hearing this, Han Shao raised an eyebrow, let go of his hand, and let Haluz maintain his bow. Haluz's emotions surged as he slowly said, "Your name is enough to be remembered in Sunil's history. Not only are you Sunil's benefactor, but you're also my benefactor. In my eyes, this is not a promise, not a deal, and not a hire. This is a favor that I can never repay. Your Excellency Black Star, from today onward, I'm willing to be your blade and follow you forever until the end of the universe. As he said that, all the officers were silent. They stared at Haluz with different expressions. Is this loyalty? Han Xiao was silent for a while before nodding. Okay. Haluz then straightened up and smiled. He followed everyone's gaze and looked at the civilians with joy and sadness. The price of peace is blood on your hands. Jeanette shook her head. I hope that Sunil will remember this war and remember the atrocities that we so-called heroes have done for the continuation of our race, Haluz lamented. Survival of the fittest. Every civilization will eventually become a demon, carrying the burden of history and moving forward. Han Xiao said casually before looking to the side. A group of Sunil upper echelons walked over. This time, it was not Otis who came to negotiate, but the Sunil leader. The Sunil leader expressed his gratitude personally, and Han Xiao also responded. After talking for a while, the Sunil leader then tactfully said that he would wait until Han Xiao moved all the subterranean mutants out before settling the payment. Han Xiao had no objections. Watching the group of Sunil upper echelons leave, Sylvia slapped Haluz back and said angrily, "These people are really annoying. I hate politicians too." Haluz did not refute. He had not done all this for the sake of politicians. This time, Fu Ding reminded him, Black Star, about the migration. Han Xiao was about to answer when his communicator rang. He glanced at it and smiled. You came at the right time. The next moment, everyone's vision turned black, and a huge shadow suddenly appeared, covering the crowd. Its size was still increasing. Be it the Sunils or the players, they were all shocked and looked up. Hundreds of super-large transport spaceships slowly descended from the sky, covering the entire sky. The moving company I called is here. Han Xiao let out a sigh of relief and smiled. He had borrowed a batch of large transport spaceships from the two financial groups specifically to transport the subterranean mutants. After a few trips, he would be able to move all the subterranean mutants and the prophecy stones to an uninhabited planet. Anyway, the subterranean mutants lived on rocks, so they did not have strict requirements for the environment. The players had already been informed of the migration plan. Seeing so many spaceships, many of them were excited and started whispering to each other. That must be the migration team. Migrating a race with billions of people. What grand scene. The subterranean mutants will not be wiped out. Black Star did not disappoint me. Seeing their own faction make such a grand scene, the players were very proud and felt a sense of collective honor. At the same time, many of the players approved of the Black Star Corps' decision to migrate the subterranean mutants. After such a long battle, the players had seen many tragedies and were certain that the subterranean mutants were definitely the weaker party. Sympathizing with the weaker party was a habit. When the players felt that the subterranean mutants were pitiful, it indirectly increased their approval of the migration plan. As a result, the players felt more of a sense of belonging to the Black Star Corps. Han Xiao was very clear about this. He had the intention of making use of sympathy in the first place to make this mission a memorable event in the hearts of the players to increase the importance of the faction. The effect seemed to be quite good. Beside him, Fu Ding smiled. He felt that this might be the best outcome for both parties. Looking at Han Xiao's back, Fu Ding had a thought. He had grown very quickly and was already able to suppress Chun Xing in his body alone. Furthermore, his conflict with Chun Xing was almost resolved. This meant that he did not need the help of the Black Star Corps anymore. Chapter 616. Galactic Migration was a huge project. All the surrendered subterranean mutants brought their prophecy stone base stations and were sent to the financial group's transport ships. Without these prophecy stones, even if Planet Sunil still had some small minds, it would not be able to form a large-scale psychic current. In other words, the catastrophe had disappeared, and this planet had become suitable for the Sunils to live on. The ability of the Black Star Corps to gather resources made the upper echelons of planet Sunil gasp in amazement, and their attitude became even more respectful. Seeing that the transport team had arrived, they did not waste any more time and submitted an application to the Mercenary Alliance to complete the mission. Han Xiao received the notification that the funds had been transferred to his account, and the interface responded, completing all the missions for this mission. Sunil Rescue Operation, large-scale mission. A large sum of money was transferred to his account, and it slightly covered the expenses of mobilizing the transport team. Completing the large-scale mission by himself added a dazzling achievement to the Black Star Corps' resume. His credibility rating increased tremendously, and the Mercenary Alliance once again raised their evaluation of the Black Star Corps. Overall evaluation: a famous large army, floating dragons field team. Their main area of activity is the Garden Star system. They're the iconic mercenary organization in the Garden Star system. They have hundreds of thousands of mercenaries under their command, and they are immortal. Their average strength is grade C. The Black Star Corps has many connections in the mercenary world, and they have a lot of capital. They have army bases on Planet Golden Gate, Blue Star, and Planet Sunil. Until now, they have maintained an extremely high completion rate for their missions, and they are highly praised and trustworthy. Army Commander Black Star has nicknames such as Immortal Body and Dark Star Destroyer. He maintains a good relationship with some civilizations, and he is also the owner of the Godora Civilization's Golden Gal badge. An increase in the evaluation meant an increase in their status. The Black Star Corps received a new reputation, and the happiest people were the players. They felt a sense of satisfaction. Other than the official mission, the Grade A Sunil main storyline mission, Eliminate Subterranean Mutants, was also completed. The players had earned a lot, and they were smiling like blooming chrysanthemums. Han Xiao did not pursue an extremely high evaluation for this mission, and he received a rating. According to the mission requirements, exterminating an entire race should have given him the highest evaluation, but the mission reward could not compare to the benefits of migrating the subterranean mutants. Hence, he chose the more profitable side. Han Xiao was not lacking in this mission reward anyway. After all, the experience gained by the players through this mission would all be converted into spending power, so he could just cut it off. However, the A-rank mission had given him an unexpected reward. A new dungeon had been created for the NPC template, Subterranean Mutant Annihilation. Not bad. Han Xiao did not have to worry about it. But as the players gradually he could use, they would come in the future, so he did not have to worry. In the next few days, Han Xiao stayed on Planet Sunil to supervise the transportation of the subterranean mutants. After Sunil, some of the players were still on Planet Sunil. Although the mission was over, Sunil still had a lot of things to do, and there was still a lot of profit to be gained. With the third base as a transfer station, this was also the faction headquarters. Using the missions on Planet Sunil to train the players was the subsequent profit of the NPC resource land. Sunil's predicament was resolved, and the Sunil warriors no longer needed to take risks outside. Sarinder and some of the Sunil mercenaries wanted to return home and not be mercenaries anymore, so they asked Han Xiao to leave. Everyone felt guilty and sorry for Black Star. Han Xiao had expected such a situation and had prepared a compromise. He allowed Sarinder and the others to stay on Planet Sunil and not go out on missions, but they could train mercenaries in the third base. The Sunil warriors all accepted this plan. To be honest, they also wanted to do something to repay Black Star. There was no danger in staying in their hometown to train the newcomers, and the work was easy. Thus, Sarind and the others did not mention leaving anymore. Finally, the last batch of transport teams took off, and Han Xiao and the others left in the spaceship. On the ground, countless Sunils looked up and sent the Black Star Corps off on an uninhabited planet suitable for the subterranean mutants to live in. The subterranean mutants were all moved there, and Han Xiao followed the transport team to check on the situation of the mutants. Because all the subterranean mutants had been united and were no longer separated by regions like before, it had indirectly promoted the development of their civilization. The various tribes mixed together and lived together. They had skipped a stage and completed the unification of their race. From the perspective of the development of a civilization, this was a start with a terrifying lead. Because the Germinal tribe was Black Star's emissary, spreading the knowledge that Han Shao had given them to all the mutants, the Germinal tribe naturally became the leader of billions of subterranean mutants. In the minds of the Germinal tribe's subterranean mutants, Black Star was like a god spreading the gospel, saving all of them. The Germinal tribe's respect for Han Shao was also transmitted to the hearts of all the subterranean mutants. After settling down, the subterranean mutants treated Han Shao as a symbol of worship. Because of the uniqueness of the mental network, culture spread at an unbelievable speed, and every mutant gave themselves a name. When Han Shao arrived, the Germinal tribe was leading all the subterranean mutants to build a huge nest. His visit was warmly welcomed by the subterranean mutants, and the Germinal tribe leader came out to welcome him. "This is our new home." The Germinal tribe leader excitedly showed off the new nest like a child, showing off his favorite item to an adult. "Very good. This planet will be your habitat from now on." Han Shao nodded and smiled. "You are already a new civilization. You shouldn't be called subterranean mutants anymore. Are you going to give us a new name?" The Germinal tribe leader asked happily. "No, this is your right." After a simple conversation, Han Shao left the planet and did not interfere with the development of the subterranean mutants. They were still in the embryonic stage of their civilization, and he was prepared to let the subterranean mutants develop on their own. The spaceship left the planet, and a new notification popped up on the interface. "You have received a new legendary point." Han Shao was pleasantly surprised. He did not expect to receive such an unexpected reward. There was more than one notification. Plus 10,000 Black Spirit Race faction favorability current relationship. Worship, Black Spirit Race? Han Shao was stunned for a moment before realization dawned on him. The subterranean mutants had given their race an official name, Black Spirit Race. Why did it sound like it was related to his nickname? However, he did not know his position in the hearts of the subterranean mutants. They had named themselves after Black Star and called themselves the Black Spirit Race. Han Zhao's interest was piqued. Interesting. I wonder what kind of civilization these subterranean mutants will develop into in the end. With a smile, Han Shao piloted the Blacklight stealth and disappeared into the horizon. The results of the migration were reported to the players. Seeing that the subterranean mutants had started a new life, many players heaved a sigh of relief and could not help but feel proud of the Black Star Corps. On the forums, the Sunil incident became the hottest topic for a while. The players enjoyed the feeling of changing the fate of a race and becoming the savior of the world. Their sense of belonging and identity toward the faction increased subtly, and this incident also became a memory that left a deep impression on the players, adding to the building of their feelings. On planet Sunil, the Sunils were also very grateful toward the Black Star Corps. There would be people coming to visit base number 3 every day. Serene and the other retired Sunil mercenaries had officially set up a training camp in base number 3 to recruit Sunils as disciples. The training camp was a channel for the army to continuously send soldiers. Although it was just the beginning, Planet Sunil had a bright future. As long as the Sunils continued to grow, there would always be groups of people who would go into the galaxy and sign up to become mercenaries. It could be said that, as the Sunils developed, the profits of base number 3 would continue to increase. The development of the two was directly related. After the Sunil trip, the development of the Black Star Corps in the Garden Star system was on the right track, entering a virtuous cycle. The hundreds of thousands of players gradually showed their usefulness. The remaining players in Blue Star also completed the test in base number 2 batch after batch. Finally, other than the new players, all the Blue Star players entered the galaxy and became members of the Black Star Corps. The number of mercenaries had reached the 1,000,000 mark. Such a large scale was very rare, even among large mercenary groups. The Black Star Corps steadily expanded in the Garden Star system, becoming a construction maniac. Other than trying to monopolize the mercenary market in the Garden Star system, Han Shao also started to reach out to the nearby star systems. His connections provided the army with a huge amount of help, and the speed of his rise shocked Ghidorah. Han Shao would occasionally personally carry out high-difficulty mercenary missions or use his familiarity with the storyline to find some profitable planets and turn them into new NPC resource lands. Every once in a while, he would carry out a large-scale mercenary mission as the main storyline to cultivate the cohesion of the players. The Black Star Corps' influence grew steadily, and there were no external factors hindering their development. The risk was almost negligible, and everything was carried out according to Han Zhao's plan. Chapter 617. Colton Star Cluster, Controversial Land, Hyde Star System. The 6-star system civilizations, including the Ghidorah civilization, all wanted to occupy the Hyde Star System. They had garrison troops in the areas they controlled and were in a stalemate. Outside the military area of the 6 civilizations, the Hyde Star System was sparsely populated with transit stations that served the galactic travelers. Due to the vague jurisdiction of the Hyde Star System, these transit stations became the gaps between the gray areas. Not only were there scavengers, space pirates, and wanted criminals, even the garrison officers of the 6 civilizations would occasionally come to the transit stations to enjoy themselves. They did not interfere with each other. Planet Orange Transit Station was such a gray area. At this moment, there was a group of players moving around. Hao Tian, Sleepy Winter, Twinkle Fried Rice, and the others walked on the dirty and noisy streets. There were more than 10 people in the group. Some of them were professional players from the Long Sky Club, while the others were players from the Rivervale Club. Mad Blade and Angry Sword were moving together with Long Sky. Both parties had accepted the same hidden chain mission, and the last part of the mission was at Planet Orange Transit Station. Mad Blade and Hao Tian were good friends, so the two teams moved together. 2 years had passed in the game. Due to Mad Blade's outstanding performance in the first season of the Pro League, the Rivervale Club had formed a new team with him as the core. Mad Blade's teammates were mostly new, and they were still in the adjustment period. Preparations for the second Galaxy Pro League had begun long ago. During this period of time, they had been warming up. The Galaxy Times had revealed that there would be new changes to the competition format this time. The competition would officially begin after a while, and all the teams were preparing in full swing. More than a year ago, the players from the other novice planets had finally stepped into the galaxy. The professional players had already reached level 90, and their skills, equipment, talents, and special items were all the focus of the professional players during the preparation period. The cooperation between Long Sky and Rivervale was for the reward of the hidden mission. As the core of the team, Mad Blade was under a lot of pressure. He wanted to obtain good results to prove himself and not disappoint the club, so he would not let go of any opportunity. Captain, the person we're looking for is hiding on this planet. How do we find him? Evil Sword asked Mad Blade. Evil Sword was Frenzied Sword's teammate, and he was a talented newbie. In the entire Rivervale team, only Evil Sword's skills were outstanding, and he could barely serve as Frenzied Sword's right-hand man. As for the other teammates, in Frenzied Sword's eyes, they were just ordinary blue-collar workers. The last part of the mission is definitely going to be very difficult. The mission hint is for us to look for clues on our own. Based on experience, entertainment venues in gray areas like this will have a lot of information circulating. We can start from there, Mad Blade said. At this time, Hao Tian, the captain of Long Sky, spoke in a low voice. We'll talk about that later. Let's worry about our safety first. Hearing this, everyone looked around. Pedestrians wearing all kinds of crude combat suits were staring at them. Their faces were ferocious, and their eyes were malicious. They kept glancing at the exquisite combat armor and weapons on the players, as if they wanted to rob them. In the vision of Hao Tian, Mad Blade, and the other players, most of the pedestrians had red names, which meant that they were enemies. The rest had neutral yellow names, and there was not a single green name to be seen. Galactic pirates or scavengers, huh? Everyone's expression did not change. They were already used to fighting monsters. As Black Star's mercenaries, they had killed countless galactic pirates in the past 2 years. Bright yellow mechanical force flashed all over Mad Blade's body. A helmet appeared and covered his head. His armor started to change shape, and various structures appeared. It turned into a blue and yellow heavy armor that looked like a luxurious knight's heavy armor. This was a weakened version of the commander-class armor called Mountain. It was a rare pink equipment, and the guild had spent a lot of money to order it from Han Shao. At the current level of the players, Mountain was one of the best equipment at the pinnacle. Then he took off the long box on his back and activated it with mechanical force. The box quickly changed shape and turned into a long-handled heavy melee weapon with an axe and a cannon. This was an improved version of the slash cannon, and its size was close to half the size of a person. The others all started to enter battle mode. They had all sorts of equipment, and the worst equipment they had was purple. The club guilds served the professional players, and they used the guild to support their teams. Naturally, they did not lack money, and their equipment level had always been the best among the players. It was normal for them to attract the attention of the galactic pirates. The atmosphere suddenly became tense, and both sides faced each other. This group of galactic pirates laughed. Just as they were about to attack, a member's expression suddenly changed, and he hurriedly shouted, "Stop! Don't attack! They are all Black Star's men." As soon as he said that, the ferocious expressions of the galactic pirates suddenly disappeared, and their expressions changed. They wanted to charge forward a second ago, but the next moment, they hurriedly retreated and opened up a distance. They then carefully looked at the armor of the players, and their eyes slowly widened. In the hidden areas of the players' armor and weapons, there was the same symbol. It was a round black circle with a white outline. 4 straight rays were distributed in the shape of a cross, separated by a small distance from the circle, representing the light rays. It looked like a black star emitting light. None of the galactic pirates present did not know what this symbol represented. This was the symbol of the Black Star Corps. All the galactic pirates showed fear and hesitation, not daring to attack. This time, a powerful voice sounded from the other end of the street. It seems to be very lively here." Everyone turned around and saw a few officers wearing Ghidorah uniforms slowly walking over. Their cold gazes swept past all the galactic pirates. In the eyes of the players, the Ghidorah officers who suddenly appeared were the only group of friendly characters with green names. "Friend from the Black Star Corps, do you need help?" The leading Ghidorah officer twisted his neck, and his expression was cold. The previously ferocious galactic pirates instantly turned into trembling little rabbits. In a Hide Star system, there was an iron law that could not be broken, and that was that no one could attack the officers of the 6 civilizations. Otherwise, the garrison would not mind clearing out the gray areas. The entire Colton Star cluster knew that the Black Star Corps and Ghidorah were on the same side, and the galactic pirates were extremely regretful. They had kicked an iron plate that they could not afford to offend. "Run!" The galactic pirates scattered like the stars in the sky. The players seemed to be used to this scene and kept their weapons. They did not waste any time chasing after this group of small monsters. When the Ghidorah officers saw this, they did not make a move. They nodded at the players and turned around to leave. The intention of these officers was very simple. It was purely because they saw the Black Star Corps, so they came over to help. The 2 factions were allies, and the Black Star Corps was the recipient of the highest honor in Ghidorah. As a member of the Black Star Corps, he would receive extra help wherever there were Ghidorah people. The Black Star network that the players joked about gradually became a reality. The 2 galactic pirates, one tall and one short, ran very far away. They turned around and confirmed that no one was chasing them before they dared to stop and rest. They held onto their knees and panted. "Off! I thought we were dead for sure." Luckily, they did not chase after us. The shorter galactic pirate wiped his cold sweat. The taller galactic pirate nodded repeatedly. He had a look of relief on his face. Currently, in the few star systems around the Garden Star System, other than those star system level civilizations, no one dared to provoke the Black Star Corps. Luckily, we are only a small gang and do not have a bounty. If not, we would be in trouble. The shorter galactic pirate's chest heaved up and down. We should be thankful that we do not have the qualifications to be wanted." The taller galactic pirate laughed bitterly. He did not know whether he should be happy or not. Among the galactic pirates, there was a saying that it was better to meet the Dragon Emperor than to meet the Black Star. The Black Star Corps had risen at an astonishing speed in the past 2 years. One of the reasons was that they had taken on the role of galactic pirate hunter. Around the Garden Star system, all the galactic pirate gangs that were not small were the prey of the Black Star Corps. They were wiped out one after another, and all their battleships were seized. Conservatively speaking, at least 400 battleships were seized by the Black Star Corps. The galactic pirates in the surrounding star systems felt threatened. A portion of the large galactic pirate gangs joined forces to assassinate the Black Star in order to protect themselves. However, they did not expect to be ambushed instead. The Black Star seemed to have predicted the enemy's intentions. Millions of mercenaries entered the battle, and the scene was shocking. In the end, the galactic pirate gangs that joined forces were wiped out. Although many large galactic pirates were captured, most of them were hidden by the Black Star. Only a small portion of them were taken out to exchange for the bounty. All of them had been ravaged and abused by the Black Star. It was said that once, when the Black Star took a captive to exchange for the bounty, the staff in the office could not recognize that the captive was the wanted target. It was as though they were two different people. After the news spread, countless galactic pirates were terrified. They all thought that the Black Star had some special fetish for galactic pirates. The Black Star instantly became 100 times more ferocious in their eyes. The saying, "It's better to meet the Dragon Emperor than to meet the Black Star," started to spread, and it was strongly agreed by the majority of galactic pirates. The Dragon Emperor Ames was neutral, but her field team was against galactic pirates. They would rather fall into the hands of the Ames than to fall into the hands of the Black Star. Therefore, the galactic pirate gangs near the Garden Star system all fled. The security of the few star systems became unprecedentedly good, and now, only small galactic pirates were left. Who would have thought that the Black Star's people would appear here? Is it not enough that the Black Star Corps monopolized the business of the Garden Star system? Is it that they want to expand to hide? Who knows? This is not impossible. In the few star systems nearby, other than those star system-level civilizations, what other force would be willing to provoke the Black Star Corps? They already have the monopoly. The two of them panted for a while before continuing to run. Mad Blade and How Tion searched for clues at the transit station. After a few hours, they finally pieced together the clues for the last part of the mission. They came to a remote repair station. The mission target was a disabled repair worker with deep wrinkles. He had lost both of his hands and was using mechanical prosthetics to replace them. He was repairing a severely damaged communicator. His appearance and temperament were very ordinary. However, in the information that the players had detected, this repair worker named Ronaldo had the highest level of danger, which was extremely fatal. It was obvious that he was a guy who hid his strength well. How Tion and Mad Blade exchanged glances and pushed Sleepy Winter forward. This guy had the highest charisma attribute among them, so he was the most suitable to communicate with people. Sleepy Winter took out the mission item and handed it over. He said in a friendly tone, "Hello, we were asked by someone to give this to you." They had accepted a hidden mission and specially made a trip here to pass the mission item to Ronaldo. It was a letter. Ronaldo raised his eyes and looked at them. He put down the machine in his hands and said calmly, "Who are you people?" "We're from the Black Star Corps." "Black Star Corps." Ronaldo's expression changed slightly, and he said with a deep voice, "I've heard of you guys. It said that Black Star is a very strong mechanic. Unfortunately, if it was a year ago and my hand were still intact, I would really like to spar with him." Mad Blade and the others were shocked. Han Xiao was a grade A super. Since this person dared to say that he wanted to spar with him, he should also be a grade A super. This hidden mission seemed to be a little unpredictable. "Don't be in a hurry to leave. Let me see what's written in the letter." Ronaldo lowered his head and opened the letter. It was filled with secret codes. He lived in seclusion there, and for some reason, he only used the primitive method of sending messages through letters. The players waited for a while, and after Ronaldo finished reading the letter, he let out a sigh and lamented. "A new storm is coming. Sigh. Tell your employer that I've already retired and won't accept any recruitment. I only want to live here quietly. No matter what happens in the Shattered Star Ring, it won't affect me. The player's interface notified them that the mission had changed to reporting to their employer. They would be able to receive their reward then. However, these professional players did not leave immediately. They were very sensitive to hidden storylines, and when they heard Ronaldo's words, they all realized that there was information that they could dig deeper. May I know what the storm you're talking about is? Sleepy Winter asked. Ronaldo looked at him and seemed to find Sleepy Winter more pleasing to the eye. He said, haven't you guys noticed? In the past 2 years, the situation in the Shattered Star Ring has become more and more turbulent. The 7-star cluster civilizations have all been acting strangely. This is a strange sign. The vortex is slowly forming, and it's still in the brewing stage. When it surfaces, the entire Shattered Star Ring will be swept in, and no organization will be able to stay out of it. Everyone was confused. Their range of activity was temporarily limited to the few star systems around Garden, so they did not have much experience with the turbulence in the Shattered Star Ring. After all, their main range of activity was not large enough. There were also some players who explored new maps further away, such as to another star cluster. However, the time spent was not proportional to the rewards. Most of the time, they could only look at the scenery and make a wasted trip. The galaxy was extremely vast, and just the Shattered Star Ring was already very large. Searching for missions alone was like searching for a needle in a haystack. On the other hand, there were countless missions in the Black Star Core that one could choose from. Sleepy Winter continued to ask, and Ronaldo said with a deep voice, no one knows the goal of those star cluster civilizations, but this storm is not a coincidence. I'm guessing that there's a transcendental organization behind this change in the Shattered Star Ring. Transcendental organization? Is it one of those 3 universal civilizations that only appeared in the background story for the time being? Or is it someone else? Everyone looked at each other and guessed softly. The players did not know what had happened to the Tyrant's party, so they naturally did not know the inside story. However, this did not stop Madblade, Hao Tian, and the others from guessing that this news might be related to the storyline of the next version. After all, this was not the first time. In version 1.0, Black Star had already revealed the mutation disaster in version 2.0. Everyone was overjoyed. Knowing the clues of the next version in advance might give them a huge advantage. Right at this moment, Ronaldo suddenly thought of something and said, by the way, you guys are Black Star subordinates. Help me pass something to him. Everyone was stunned for a moment before nodding. This was clearly a new mission, following which Ronaldo took out a pen and paper, wrote a series of galactic words on the paper, and passed it to everyone. Sleepy Winter took it with suspicion, and the interface notified him that he had received a list full of names. What is this? This time, it was Madblade who could not help but ask. This is a list. Ronaldo's tone was heavy, as though he had thought of some bad memories. Grabbing the position of his broken arm, a look of anger and fear flashed across his face, and he added in a low voice, a hunting list. Air, why do you want us to pass it to Black Star? Chapter 618, whose hunting target is Black Star. Madblade's expression changed, and his face was filled with shock. The expressions of the others also became strange. Black Star was the leader of their faction, and when they heard that someone wanted to deal with him, they felt as if they had a common enemy. Hao Tian's eyes flashed, and he said in the channel, we might have opened a new mission line. Mingwei, continue asking and try to trigger more hidden missions. Sleepy Winter nodded. Black Star is our captain, and we will definitely deliver this list to him. However, we want to know more. Can you tell us the details of this list? The people on the list are all famous individuals from all over the Shattered Star Ring, Ronaldo said with a deep voice. They are not ordinary grade A supers. They are basically big shots with organizations or lone wolves who are famous for their individual strength. The goal of this group of people is to hunt and capture these powerful individuals. According to what I know, some of the people on the list have already gone missing. Who are the people on the list? Sleepy Winter followed up with another question. That seems to be a mysterious group. I don't know where they came from, so I'll just call them hunters for now. They're the strongest people on the list. I've only met them once. At that time, I encountered two hunters who were extremely strong, probably at the level of A+. Ronaldo's eyes turned serious, and he added, "My hands were broken by one of them. So, you're also a target of the hunters?" "No." Ronaldo shook his head. Sleepy Winter was stunned, and he said with a confused expression. Then, this time, Ronaldo interrupted him and explained, "I'm an outsider who was implicated, so I only lost two hands." After pausing for a while, he continued, "I have a friend who is also a calamity grade. He's the target on the list. He runs an armed organization in the Skywalker star system and has a close relationship with the Hutt civilization. A year ago, I was a guest at his headquarters. Everything was normal at first, but two hunters suddenly appeared and killed their way into the headquarters. No one could stop them. Thus, my friend and I joined forces to face the enemy. However, the two of them possessed overwhelming battle prowess, and we were utterly defeated. During the battle, I used some method to steal some information from their communicators and obtain this incomplete list of names. Those two people's target was my friend, so they captured him and took him away. As for me, I was heavily injured and fell to the side. No matter what, I'm still a grade A super. I thought that they would take me away, but they didn't even look at me and just swaggered away. They don't seem to care about non-target people." Ronaldo suddenly smiled bitterly. "It can also be said that they didn't put me in their eyes, so I escaped." Everyone was astonished. The goal of the hunters was to capture the strong, but they didn't take away an A-class strong who was seriously injured and had lost the ability to fight back. Was this a clear goal, or was their vision too high? No matter what, this group of mysterious hunters seemed to be unfathomable. This hidden storyline is definitely not simple. Mad Blade said in the channel, "Although the hunters are very mysterious, the people on the list are disappearing one by one. This can't be hidden, and it means that the hunters are still on the move," Ronaldo continued. "Please be sure to pass the list to Black Star. Although I don't know him, since the Black Star mercenaries helped me, I don't mind reminding your army commander. He also has a small plan. Black Star had the Dragon Emperor behind him, so he might be able to deal with the hunters. If Black Star succeeded, he would not have to continue hiding here. The reason he kept a low profile was because he was afraid that he would one day be on the list of hunters. Although he had only fought them once, he was already scared of them. This time, the player's interface had notification. You have triggered the hidden mission, mysterious hunting list." Everyone looked at each other and nodded. In a certain star system in the Shattered Star Ring, a spaceship with obvious signs of damage was moving at full speed like a stream of light across the dark universe. "Warning! Warning! Fuel reserves have dropped to the warning line. Exiting hyperdrive mode in 1 minute," the artificial intelligence said. "Damn it! Those two fellows will catch up." Bang! In the cockpit, Kernid was furious. He slammed his fist on the control panel with an anxious expression. He was from a humanoid race with dark purple skin, and there were natural patterns on his skin. He wore a specially made runic armor battlesuit that was a combination of mechanical and magical technology. The armor was filled with countless mysterious magic runes both inside and outside, having over 100 types of magical functions. It was a combat equipment commonly used by interstellar mages. However, this expensive rune armor was now in tatters. It was covered in Kernid's blood and was damaged all over. Kernid was the strongest official of a certain star system civilization, and he was also an honorary member of the Hidden Red Robe Abbey. He was a mage, and his nickname was Dark Purple Warlock. He had a very high reputation in the star system he was active in, but he was currently running for his life, and he had never been in such a sorry state before. Everything was because of the two enemies that suddenly appeared. He had been enjoying a paid vacation and traveling outside, but he had encountered two mysterious strangers. Without saying anything, they had directly attacked him, and he had started fighting in a daze. Following which, Kernid was shocked to find that he was not a match for the two of them and was heavily injured. Luckily, he had a trump card and managed to shake the two of them off. He boarded the spaceship and escaped, But the two mysterious enemies chased after him, and he did not dare to stop. The fuel was quickly depleted, and the spaceship gradually slowed down. It finally left the hyperdrive mode and returned to normal flight mode. *T. Kernid was sweating profusely as he clenched his fists. As soon as he said that, the buzzing sound of magic passed through the layers of cabin walls and was captured by Kernid's sharp senses. His expression changed drastically. At the belly of the spaceship, a blue ring lit up, following which the ring expanded rapidly and turned into a teleportation gate. Two people walked out from it. The two of them wore white coats of the same style, and there was no logo on them. The material of the clothes seemed to be very unique, and countless tadpole-like enchanted runes flashed on them. The two of them, a man and a woman, both wore special alloy masks that covered their faces. The man's mask looked like a bird's head, while the woman's mask looked like a cat's. More than 10 thick ancient books floated around the man, and they were all open. They were filled with magic words and were shining with colorful magic light. The golden runes turned into a few rings and surrounded the man's body. The location is correct. The man's tone was calm. He waved his finger, and the pages of one of the books suddenly flipped. The teleportation gate behind him shrunk into a dot and disappeared. He was a skilled master mage. All of a sudden, the wall in front of the two of them exploded, and dozens of radiant purple lights shot out from Kernid's hands in the cockpit, piercing through the layers of walls and attacking the two uninvited guests. He knew the strength of the two pursuers and attacked first. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the man changed his hand gesture, and all the books started flipping at the same time. A circle of blue magic circle enveloped him and the woman beside him, blocking all the attacks. All the purple arcs exploded into pieces of light, but they couldn't shake the circle at all. Kernid quickly passed through the hole. His rune armor lit up with layers of light, and countless magic power gathered on his body. Like a colorful stream of light, he crashed heavily into the blue magic barrier. He had already learned his lesson. Fighting with long-range magic was asking for humiliation, so he switched to melee combat as soon as they met. All of Kernid's power was concentrated on one point, and the energy did not dissipate at all. His control was extremely precise. If a normal grade A super were to face this attack, they would choose to avoid it and would not dare to face it head-on. However, facing these two mysterious enemies, he did not have much confidence. Dong! The sound was like a bell being struck. The blue magic shield took this hit and exploded into countless glass shards. It's effective! Kernid was overjoyed, and his confidence returned. However, the next moment, he saw the light shining on the man and woman's masks. Their eyes were calm and indifferent, as if they were unaffected by his full power attack. In the next moment, the shards of the magic barrier suddenly paused and fused together, turning into a brilliant bluish-white pillar of light that blasted onto Kernid's body. It was as if he was facing his own attack. Kernid's remaining attacks were interrupted, and he was sent flying. Suppressing the pain from his injuries, he asked in shock, "What did you do? What kind of secret technique is this?" Just a defensive spell was able to take the full power attack of an experienced Calamity grade super like him. Not only was the caster unharmed, but it could also reflect all the power back at him. The effect sounded simple, but at their level, the more violent and simple the spell was, the more terrifying it was. Unlike those layers of magic shields that had quantitative changes, this spell was qualitative. I created it myself. The man's words were concise, but Kernid's eyes widened in disbelief. At this time, the woman beside him also made a move. She raised her right hand and clenched it into a fist. Ka-ka-ka! The metal twisted, and the entire spaceship let out an ear-piercing, tearing sound. The next moment, the spaceship seemed to have been crushed into a ball of paper by a large hand, turning into an irregular sphere. Rumble! A large amount of oxygen leaked out, and the fuel and engines of the spaceship exploded. Flames shot out in all directions as the sphere exploded and disintegrated in an instant. All sorts of components flew out. In just a few seconds, the spaceship turned into space trash floating in space. A spherical magic shield protected the man and woman, allowing them to float in space. Not far away, Kernid's rune armor also flickered with the light of shield. The explosion of the spaceship had worsened Kernid's injuries, and his rune armor was on the verge of breaking. Without the spaceship, there was no way to escape. Kernid's eyes were filled with despair. Within the magic shield filled with oxygen, the woman waved her arm. All the metal trash around them gathered again, sandwiching Kernid in the center and turning him into a huge sphere again. It was as if every inch of the sphere was under immense pressure, squeezing inwardly. The metal sphere slowly shrank, and its irregular shape gradually became round, becoming denser and denser. At first, there was still some resistance within the sphere, but gradually the struggle became softer and softer, and finally, there was no sound. Deep purple warlock Kernid, capture complete, the woman said coldly. The man took out his communicator, opened a list, crossed out Kernid's name, and said, Shauna, who should we choose as our next target? Shauna was this woman's name. She glanced at it, tapped on it, and said, him, the Army commander of the Black Star Corps. He only joined the list a year ago, and his organization is developing very quickly. If not for this reason, we might not have paid attention to him. By the way, this guy's a bit special. He has the nickname of Indestructible Body, and he seems to be very difficult to deal with. If we want to deal with him, we should lure him to a suitable place and leave him alone. This requires enough preparation time, and we still have to bring Kernid back. Why don't we change our target? No need. We'll split up. You send him back, and I'll deal with Black Star, Shauna said calmly. According to the data, he only stepped into the Calamity Zone 2 or 3 years ago. Plus, he's a mechanic. I alone am enough to deal with him. The man paused, smiled, and said, I almost forgot. Your ability counters mechanics. All right, I'll go back and submit the mission. You go and capture him on the way. Looks like we've gained quite a lot this time. Chapter 619. On planet Golden Gate, in the training room of the Black Star Corps headquarters, a battle was in progress. Bang! The streamlined, pitch-black mechanical soldier knocked away the 5 blue-purple robot warriors and charged all the way to Reynolds against the lasers shot out by the 10 foundational turrets. Its arms transformed into 8 high-speed spinning spiral spikes and hit Reynolds' shield, creating intense sparks. Reynolds' face was solemn as he retreated, leaving behind an electromagnetic trap to control the pitch-black mechanical soldier. At the same time, he released blinding bolts of mechanical force and used some sort of ability to increase the power of the cannon. Ka. All of a sudden, the pitch-black mechanical soldier suddenly disintegrated and turned into a torrent of pitch-black nanoparticles, quickly returning to the side of a human figure not far away. The nanoparticles reassembled and turned back into the appearance of a humanoid mechanical soldier, silently guarding this person. Your abilities are getting stronger and stronger. Breaking through to the Calamity grade is just around the corner. This person clapped his hands and praised. It was Han Xiao. Compared to 2 years ago, Han Xiao was still young and handsome. His figure was slightly taller, and his aura was even more unfathomable. At this moment, he was still wearing a low-profile, luxurious black windbreaker and was not wearing his mechanical suit. This is all thanks to your teachings, Reynolds said with a serious tone. It's all because of your talent. Han Xiao waved his hands. Out of politeness, they complimented each other. After 2 years of learning, Reynolds' energy rank was gradually approaching grade A, and he would often request to spar with Han Xiao. Both of them were mechanics, and there was no need for them to fight each other. Thus, every time they sparred, it would be a small-scale battle to test the strength and precision of each machine. The pitch-black mechanical soldier beside Han Xiao was one of the new models of mechanical soldiers that he had researched in the past 2 years. It had an enhanced nano-transformation ability, and its stats were extremely outstanding. Its performance surpassed that of the Oathkeeper, making it an elite machine. It belonged to the echelon of Calamity-grade equipment in Han Xiao's arsenal, and its model was called Phantasm. Every time he fought with Black Star, Reynolds would be shocked. This was because Black Star was always able to take out different powerful machines. Every time they sparred, he would use Black Star to test his weapons. Reynolds could not imagine how many mechanical blueprints Black Star knew. Even at Reynolds' level, learning a blueprint was not easy. If he were to study a new machine, it would be even more exhausting. However, Reynolds could not fathom Black Star's level at all. He could not understand why Black Star's research efficiency was so terrifying that he could come up with new blueprints every few days. Furthermore, every time they sparred, Reynolds could feel that it was getting easier and easier for Han Shao to deal with him. Black Star was already a calamity-grade super, but he did not seem to have any bottlenecks and was constantly getting stronger. This made Reynolds extremely shocked, and he increasingly felt that Han Shao was unfathomable. Reynolds had always prided himself on his talent and was full of confidence in himself. However, after being dealt a blow by Han Shao, he felt ashamed of his inferiority and became even more humble. Black Star had too many things for him to learn. Reynolds became more and more fanatical, wishing that he could spend every minute tracking Han Shao and recording his every action. After putting away the machine, Han Shao suddenly thought of something and asked, "How's the logistics of the army?" When it came to work, Reynolds' expression became even more serious, and he said in an orderly manner, "The storage of all kinds of resources is sufficient, and the overall situation is good. Only bases 17, 21, and 24 are in a state of emergency. The resources they lack are mainly ammunition, fuel, and conventional machinery materials. For days ago, I've already transferred resources from the 5 nearest bases. According to the schedule, the first batch of resources is estimated to arrive in 2 days." Hearing this, Han Shao nodded and asked Reynolds to leave while he remained in the room to think. Over the past 2 years, the Black Star Corps had been developing rapidly. Just as the industry had expected, they gradually monopolized the business of the Garden Star system and built subbases on dozens of civilizations in the Garden Star system. They even built an office on the mother planet of Godora. The millions of players had brought huge benefits to the Black Star Corps. Han Shao had made use of the opportunity to increase the reputation of the Black Star Corps. As the business expanded, more freelance mercenaries were attracted to join the Black Star Corps. Now, excluding the millions of Cannon Koff players, the army had 100,000 official mercenaries. The number of students in the training camp was 3 to 4 times that number. Just in terms of NPC mercenaries, the Black Star Corps was undoubtedly a large mercenary group. The students in the training camp were no longer freelance mercenaries who had not reached the standard. There were also many ordinary people who did not have any foundation. On every planet where the subbases were located, there were young men who wanted to become mercenaries or wanted to become supers. The various positions in the army were also organized and standardized. The structure was clear, and the management was more efficient. The officers had their own responsibilities. Some became area managers, overseeing hundreds of mercenary teams. Some became ace mercenaries, specializing in difficult missions. Some became fleet commanders. Some became head instructors of the training camp. Some continued to be mascots, and some became the secretary of the army commander. The position of deputy commander was still empty. This position required strength to convince the masses. Han Shao was the only calamity-grade super in the army, and the deputy commander had to be at this level to not lose his value. Among all the officers, only Reynolds was closest to the calamity grade. In the past 2 years, Han Shao had recruited more than 100 grade B supers. Some were normal mercenaries who had taken the initiative to join him, and some were elites that he had found from his memories. Among them, there was even a protagonist with a low-level halo, which added a wave of middle-level combatants. After monopolizing the Garden Star system, Han Shao began to expand. With the Garden Star system as the core, his business expanded to the surrounding star systems, each occupying a portion of the market. Blacksmithing required one's own strength. The larger the market, the greater the requirement for one's own faction's ability. As a socialist youth who was deeply influenced by the values of a construction maniac, Han Shao continued to invest the funds he earned into the construction of bases and expansion of fleets, working hard to create a virtuous cycle of benefits. Currently, the Black Star Corps had 26 fleets that were in charge of combat, logistics, and support. The total number of battleships had reached 1,600. Reality had proven that robbing galactic pirates, getting rid of tyrants, and bringing peace to the people had brought about a sizable amount of benefits. The number of bases had also reached 34. Other than Norios and Rassos, there were 3 new sponsors. 2 of them were legitimate financial groups, and the other was actually the Godora government. Not only did they give Han Shao more strategic resources, they even took out a large sum of money to invest. The relationship between both parties had become even closer. The influence of the faction radiated even further than the area of influence. The Black Star Corps had already become one of the most iconic private organizations in the Colton Star Cluster. This time, it was Floating Dragon's position that had risen along with it. The strength of the field team made Floating Dragon's deterrence no longer come from aims alone. However, Han Shao had already noticed the bottleneck of the faction's development. As a mercenary group, the Black Star Corps had already reached the top. If they continued to expand their business, their efficiency would become slower and slower. Distance was an obvious limitation. The larger the business scope, the higher the requirement for the faction's ability. Monopolizing the Garten Star system was already their limit, and they did not have the ability to monopolize a second star system for the time being. Another reason for the faction's bottleneck was the nature of the faction. Mercenary groups were relatively loose organizations. If they wanted to enter a higher level, they would have to undergo a transformation. They would have to let the mercenary business take a back seat and turn the faction into a semi-private armed organization, similar to the nature of Bloodshed Land. The difficulty was extremely high. The time was not right, and the transformation was still too early. However, Han Shao had foresight and knew that this was the only way to level up the faction. It was something that had to be done sooner or later. The only thing I don't need to worry about is my strength. Han Zhao's eyes sparkled. He was currently level 170. Compared to 2 years ago, he had only increased by 20 levels. He was currently stuck at the class advancement mission after reaching the max level of Galaxy Mechanic. However, this was because Han Shao did not focus on leveling up. Most of his EXP had been saved up by him, and his EXP reserve had reached a terrifying number. Even if the EXP cost to level up at this stage was extremely high, his EXP reserve was enough to support him to level up a few dozen more levels. However, Han Shao did not do so. He had not encountered many strong enemies in the past 2 years, so he was not in a hurry to level up. Therefore, he invested a lot of EXP to level up his skills in exchange for potential points and a large number of blueprints. More importantly, Han Shao considered the problem of the version update. The interval between this update was about 10 years in the game. He would not be able to harvest leaks for almost 10 years. His EXP reserve was like food for winter. The more he had, the better. This is already the late stage of version 2.0. After the Pro League, the version update will be around the corner. Psi, 10 years, level 170 main class, mechanic race, chaos observer, human form, 254 STR, 634 DX, 608 YND, 1956 INT, 263 MYS, 105 CHA, 1 LUK free attribute points, 0 potential points, 31 HP, 93732 stamina, 94180 energy, 170 LV, 11 LV, 11 energy bonus points, plus 111 STR, plus 1 DX, plus 174 YND, plus 204 INT, plus 129 MYS, plus 21220 stamina, plus 142% machinery affinity energy rank, 14780 grade. Hey, you are already an experienced grade A super. You will make your enemies experience the taste of nightmares. Compared to the development of his faction, his own strength did not have any bottlenecks. If he encountered an insane class change or class advancement quest, At least he had the quest completion card as a backup plan. However, he did not have any in stock at the moment. As long as his experience could keep up, he would be able to become stronger quickly. Han Xiao was not too worried about this. Level was not the only thing he had. In the past 2 years, he had been searching for talents everywhere. Although he had no idea what Reynolds' talent was, Han Xiao had traveled thousands of miles and brought back a similar talent, elementary grade mechanical sense. He finally had a mechanic talent. Intermediate strength in life had also triggered several strengthening notifications. Han Xiao estimated that he would be able to upgrade this talent after consuming some rare genetic potions. It was a pity that molding talents were extremely rare. The ones he had obtained in the past 2 years were all normal talents. Other than the changes in the interface, the changes in combat were even more obvious. Han Xiao had expanded the Mech Legion by many times, perfected the tactics of the various factions, and added many calamity-grade equipment. His combat style had become more comprehensive, and it was completely different from 2 years ago. Han Xiao felt that he could beat 5 or 6 of himself at the same time. Whoosh! This time, the door suddenly opened, and Sylvia stood outside. "Teacher, I've found you. A few mercenaries want to see you. They say that they have important information." 2 years ago, Sylvia was still a young girl waiting to blossom. Now, she had developed even better. She was tall, curvaceous, and had become a young and beautiful beauty. Her face was radiant, and her eyes were as bright as stars. Clear light flowed through them, and she was lively without losing her heroic spirit. Her position was Han Zhao's secretary, and her potential had finally been revealed through Han Zhao's continuous development. The homework that Han Xiao gave Sylvia would have given her a headache 2 years ago, but it was a piece of cake for her now. Her growth rate was increasing day by day, although she had not cultivated for long, and her potential had yet to be converted into strength. She was already able to display C+ strength with the special mechanical armor that Han Xiao had created. She could even spar with a Grade B super for a few rounds. Slowly, she started to show the style of the mechanical knight in Han Zhao's previous life. Han Xiao sized Sylvia up, took a good look at her, and spoke. "Who wants to see me? These people." Chapter 620. Han Xiao came to the office, and Sylvia brought Madblade and the others in. "Black Star, Madblade, and the others called out. Pork Bun was also among them, and his face was filled with excitement. As the faction grew, Pork Bun could not follow Black Star everywhere. When he heard that Madblade and the others were visiting Han Xiao, he immediately had an idea. For the sake of material for the show, he hugged Hao Tion's leg and squeezed in to join in the fun. As soon as he entered, he started recording. Han Zhao's eyes scanned the crowd, and his gaze landed on Madblade. Loading the faction leader emoji management pack, he nodded and said, "Long time no see, my friends." Hearing that, everyone laughed. They were all once members of the expert team, and Black Star's conversation with them was different. They felt that this was special treatment. "What important information do you have for me?" Han Xiao was curious. Players would not wake up early if there was no benefit, so they most likely accepted a mission from someone. "I heard that this is a hunting list, and you're on it." Madblade explained their experience, then took out the list and passed it to Han Xiao. "Ronaldo? I've never heard of this name before. What's with the hunters?" Han Xiao frowned and flipped through the list. His name was indeed on it. "Someone has their eyes on me. Who could it be?" Han Xiao pondered. The only similarity between the people on the list was that they were all famous calamity-grade supers in the various regions of the Shattered Star Ring. Some of them were very famous, and he had heard of them in his previous life. To dare make a move on these people, no matter what the motive of the hunters was, it proved that their strength was unfathomable. "Are they targeting me because of my fame and strength?" Han Xiao pondered. In the past 2 years, the Black Star Corps had rapidly risen, and Han Xiao did not have many opportunities to act personally. For them to target him meant that they also considered him as one of the famous and powerful people in the Shattered Star Ring. Did Ronaldo say anything else? Madblade shook his head. "No, it seems that there is a lack of information. I can't prove the authenticity of this list. I will ask Philip to collect the recent whereabouts of the members on the list. If there's really such a group of hunters, he gave too little information. I don't know where this group of people came from. Han Xiao shook his head helplessly. In other words, a calamity-grade super was equivalent to a rare resource in the universe. A tall tree attracted the wind, and they would always be targeted by some organizations with ulterior motives. Currently, undercurrents were surging in the Shattered Star Ring. The Crimson Tide of version 3.0 was slowly happening, and all kinds of monsters could appear, not only in the Shattered Star Ring, but also in the other star fields. The influence of the Red Empire's renewed expansion radiated throughout the entire galaxy. The three universal civilizations had finally entered the tiring period of peace, just like the 7-year itch between a married couple. Although it was not to the point of divorce, quarrels had become a daily occurrence. After a small argument, they could still fight in bed and reconcile at the end of the bed, but the indirect turbulence would not disappear. In Han Zhao's previous life, the Crimson Tide was a chaotic era. Many organizations that were originally hidden in the dark surfaced and took advantage of the chaos to shift the blame to the Crimson Dynasty. The situation that the players were facing was a chaotic era where demons danced wildly. Although Han Xiao was familiar with the storyline, in the Crimson Tide, there was more than one organization that attacked the strong. Some had been exposed in his previous life, and some had never been discovered. Just based on the incomplete information that Mad Blade and the others had brought, he was unable to determine the origins of the hunters. At the very least, it could be the doing of an ambitious private organization. In his previous life, the Dark Star had done the same thing. At the very least, it could be a sign of the calamity of the Supers or the Silver Revolutionary Army. However, this list at least reminds me to be careful. Han Xiao nodded. Although he did not know the identity of the enemy, he knew that someone had their eyes on him, so he could remain vigilant. According to the information, this group of mysterious hunters was very strong and could easily crush normal calamity grades. They were most likely grade A+, which made Han Xiao feel a little pressured. I should find time to complete the class advancement mission. I'm now level 170, and the next race evolution will be when I reach level 180. My strength will be greatly increased, and I won't have to worry about grade A+ supers. Unfortunately, there was too little information about the enemy. He could only take precautions and could not take the initiative to find the enemy. This was like a ticking time bomb. I should find time to return a floating dragon and find old man Aesop to tell my fortune. Han Xiao thought. At this time, Mad Blade, who had the highest favorability with Han Xiao, spoke again. Black Star, do you know about the recent changes in the Shattered Star Ring? They had learned some hidden information from Ronaldo and thought that it was related to the storyline of the next version. Now that they had finally met the faction leader, they felt that since Han Xiao was the mission target, he might know some information. Mad Blade wanted to find out as much information as possible. Recent changes? What do you mean? Han Xiao raised his brows. Ronaldo told us that the Shattered Star Ring has been in chaos recently. He said that there's a supernatural organization behind the scenes. Mad Blade carefully probed. I know, the Red Empire. The atmosphere suddenly became quiet. Mad Blade opened his mouth. How Tion's face twitched. Everyone had a constipated expression on their faces. He said it just like that. Although they had gotten the answer, they all felt a strange sense of difference. They had thought that this was a big secret that almost no one knew about, but the second person they asked had casually said it. It was as if the inside story of the Shattered Star Ring that Ronaldo cared about, but could not understand, was just an ordinary matter that did not need to be kept secret from Black Star. The process was way too easy. Mad Blade and the others could not help but wonder if this information was important or not. Only Pork Bun was the most excited, and his eyes were shining. In version 1.0, Black Star had hinted about the mutation disaster in version 2. Though, now Black Star was hinting about the next version. The group felt that Han Xiao was becoming more and more mysterious, as if he knew everything. Mad Blade was the first to know Han Xiao, but he could not help but feel that he did not understand this person at all. Han Zhao's eyes turned, and he changed the topic. The information you guys gave me is indeed valuable. I have a mission for you guys. As he said that, he quickly wrote a bonus mission and gave it to the players. The reward was generous, and there was even a free piece of equipment reward. Madblade and the others were pleasantly surprised and hurriedly accepted the mission. Han Xiao said a few words of encouragement and increased their favorability by 5 points. His favorability was equivalent to a discount. He then got Sylvia to send off the satisfied Madblade, Hao Tian, and Pork Bun. After everyone left, Han Xiao leaned back and crossed his legs. He tapped his thighs with his fingers and fell in a deep thought. He had always been paying attention to the movements of the players. All the players had left their novice planets and entered the galaxy, and his Black Star Corps was definitely the best faction to guide them. The original Blue Star players were all well fed. The second season of the Pro League was about to begin, and he was looking forward to the performance of the Chinese clubs this time. Most of the players had reached the upper limit of level 90 and could utilize more of the specialties of their classes. There would be more variety in their tactics, and it would be more exciting than the previous season. The better the results of the Chinese teams, the more attractive their faction would be. In the future, when the players reached the stage where they could travel between star fields, his faction would be able to attract players from other regions to a certain extent. Han Xiao would never complain about having too many leaks. Those backlogged genetic agents can be sold for a huge sum. Han Xiao smiled brightly. After squeezing dry countless galactic pirates, who knew how many genetic agents he had stored in his warehouse. After looking at the forums for a while, Han Xiao was about to get up and go to the machinery modification room to play with the little cuties when Sylvia suddenly pushed the door open and entered. "Teacher, there's an important invitation." "Invitation?" "The ruling civilization of the Colton Star Cluster, the Amethyst Civilization, wants to hire you." Star Cluster Civilization. Han Zhao's eyes sparkled. The business scope of the Black Star Corps was limited to star system civilizations, and they had not had the opportunity to come into contact with star cluster civilizations. Although Han Xiao had obtained the contact of an official from the Amethyst civilization during the Tyrant's Party, the employment of star cluster civilizations was only for designated personnel, and the Black Star Corps had not had the opportunity to do so. Now, he had finally received a designated employment from a star cluster civilization. The Amethyst civilization was the ruler of the Colton Star Cluster, and they had taken the initiative to invite him. It seemed like it was a rather important matter. Completing the employment of a star cluster civilization would greatly enhance his army's resume. A few years ago, Han Xiao had not come into contact with star cluster civilizations because he was not strong enough. Now, he had the qualifications. Furthermore, star cluster civilizations were a necessary path for personal growth. In the past 2 years, Han Xiao had more or less learned high-end knowledges and needed to seek the next stage of cutting-edge knowledges. Star cluster civilizations were an important way to obtain cutting-edge knowledges. This was an opportunity. Han Xiaoxin calmed himself down and told Philip to transfer the call over while encrypting the channel. The image flashed, and a familiar face appeared. It was the representative of the Amethyst civilization, Ralph, whom Han Xiao had met at the Tyrant's Party. "Black Star, it's been a while." Ralph took the initiative to speak and was rather friendly. Han Xiao chatted with him for a while before getting down to business. "You guys want to hire me?" "That's right. Your army has a good reputation, and you're one of our top candidates." "What mission is it exactly?" "This is an annihilation operation. The target is a fleet. They're disguised as travelers, but their origins aren't simple. We're prepared to annihilate this fleet as a warning to the people behind them." Ralph's explanation was rather vague and did not give any specific details. Han Xiao could not help but guess what organization the Amethyst civilization wanted to warn. With a thought, he had a rough idea. Purple Crystal looked for mercenaries to settle this matter instead of taking action personally. It was obviously not because they were incapable, but because the identity of the enemy was rather sensitive. As such, Purple Crystal did not want to use their official strength. "Is it Clint?" Han Xiao lowered his tone. Although Purple Crystal and Clint seemed to have a good relationship, They were actually brothers on the surface and secretly plotted against each other. In his previous life, Purple Crystal had fought with Clem before. Ralph laughed and did not answer this question. He changed the topic and said, "Recently, the situation in the Shattered Star Ring has been unstable. Those organizations that are probing and causing trouble are becoming more and more overboard. We have to deal with them quickly." Han Xiao stroked his chin and his eyes sparkled. 2 years had passed, and the influence of the Crimson Tide had gradually spread. Many organizations wanted to take advantage of the situation, and many organizations popped up one after another. Chaos was spreading. The waves caused by the Red Empire made the Amethyst civilization, which had always been neutral, extremely frustrated. Strange things happened frequently in the Colton Star Cluster, and the security of their territory became more and more serious. Finally, Purple Crystal could not take it anymore and decided to make an example out of them. "How about it, Black Star? Are you willing to accept our employment? Let's talk about the remuneration first." "Of course, what do you want?" "Mechanic cutting-edge knowledge," Han Xiao said concisely. Upon hearing this, Ralph's expression became difficult. "I'm afraid that's not possible. Cutting-edge knowledge is very precious, and the higher-ups will not agree. I can only give you money." Ralph paused and suddenly said, "However, you're an officer of Floating Dragon, and we respect aims. If there is a chance to work together in the future, cutting-edge knowledge is not impossible. Indeed, it is not so easy to obtain cutting-edge knowledge." Han Xiao had expected this, so he was not disappointed. Ralph's subtext was that this employment was the Black Star Corps' declaration of allegiance. If he completed it, Purple Crystal would have more employment missions for him in the future. As long as he contributed enough, Purple Crystal would be willing to provide him with cutting-edge knowledge. This still had to go through the path of faction favorability. Cutting-edge knowledge was very precious. Only at this stage could one study antimatter and psionic energy. Han Xiao did not feel that there was anything wrong with Purple Crystal's approach. There was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. He needed cutting-edge knowledge, and Purple Crystal needed powerful, unofficial armed forces to do things for them in private. Everything was a deal. Han Xiao pondered for a while before nodding. "Okay, I could give it a try." "That's great." Ralph smiled. "I will send you a gathering location later. There will be other participants in this employment, and the details of the mission will be sent to you." "Okay." Chapter 621. The rendezvous point was in another star system in Colton, very far away from the Garden Star System. Han Xiao piloted Rista's body and arrived at the rendezvous planet. This was an uninhabited planet with a serial number. When the Blacklight Stealth arrived at the rendezvous point, there were already many spaceships parked on the ground. The crowd was waiting for orders, and they all looked up at the newcomer. The spaceship landed, and Han Xiao walked out of the hatch. He casually looked around and saw 2 people with grade A life force. They seemed to be the 2 leaders, but they did not look familiar. They each led a group of people, and there were 2 organizations in total. Black Star from the Garden Star System? I've heard of him. That guy is here too. He didn't bring those immortal mercenaries. Everyone present stared at Han Xiao with surprise and started discussing among themselves. A member of the Amethyst civilization walked out of the spaceship and came before Han Xiao. "Welcome, Black Star. I'm the person in charge of this operation, Secret Service Section 4, Level 3 External Affairs Envoy Dottle." "Hello." Han Xiao nodded and asked curiously, "Where's Ralph?" Dottle's expression turned serious. "His Excellency Ralph's rank is very high. I'm his subordinate, so he doesn't need to be personally in charge of this operation." Ralph's rank in the Amethyst civilization was not low, but Han Xiao did not know that among the people involved in this operation, he was the only one who was personally invited by Ralph. The others only contacted Dottle. The reason Han Xiao enjoyed such special treatment was because he had participated in the Tyrant's party before. In Ralph's eyes, Black Star was a member of the upper circle, so he personally asked about this small operation that did not need him to be in charge to show how important it was. "This is a 3-way operation. Let me introduce you to the other 2. Dottle led Han Xiao and introduced the leaders of the other 2 organizations. "This is Jane, a powerful Esper. Everyone calls him Seaquake. This is Gadeli, nicknamed 100 Revolving Cannon. He's a mechanic like you, a gunner. The two of them sized up Han Shao before politely shaking hands. Jane and Gadeli were well equipped, especially Gadeli. The combat suit he was wearing was made of super nanomaterials. Han Shao could tell at a glance that it had a powerful transformation function. This guy was a gunner, so he might be able to transform his trump card into a combat suit and wear it. Han Shao had never heard of them before. He asked Philip to search for them on Baidu and found out that they were not registered mercenaries, but small private armed forces that had only been formed a few years ago and were quite small. Speaking of which, the Black Star Army had only been established for a few years, but the speed of its rise was extremely shocking. In a universe, the number of such organizations was only second to mercenary groups. They were established for various reasons, but they could mainly be divided into two categories. First, they were private armies that had their own goals and did not accept employment. The second type was similar to mercenaries, but they did not accept public employment like normal mercenaries. They only accepted large private orders or looked for a long-term partner. They did not belong to the mercenary industry, and the restrictions on the members of an organization were much higher than that of a mercenary group. The Bloodshed Land was this type. Generally speaking, as long as the organizer had money and strength, it was very easy to form a private armed force. The strength of a leader was the ceiling of a private armed force. Only calamity grades had the qualifications to dominate an area. Jane and Gadeli were such organizations. They were mainly active in the more distant star systems, so their name had not reached Han Zhao's ears. Instead, they had all heard of Han Zhao's name. This time, Jane suddenly spoke with a doubtful tone. "You came alone. I alone am enough." Han Shao smiled. Because this was an emergency mission, he did not waste time gathering people. Jane and Gadeli looked at each other, and joy flashed in their eyes. They were new organizations, and this joint operation was a good opportunity to come into contact with the Amethyst civilization. In their eyes, this was a competition to fight for a long-term cooperation with the Amethyst civilization. They were competitors, so they had to perform well. Originally, when they saw Black Star, their hearts skipped a beat. If Black Star had brought his indestructible army, the two of them would not have been able to compete at all. However, with Black Star coming alone, they could not help but heave a sigh of relief. They felt that they had a chance to perform. After a round of introductions, Dottle took out the star map and explained the operation steps. We're currently in Star Zone 3 of the Thousand Light Star System, and the target is in Star Zone 7. According to their movement trajectory, we can intercept them in Star Zone 9. We have 3 Calamity-grade supers and 44 battleships. The target has 65 battleships, but some of them are disguised civilian spaceships, so the enemy's actual combat strength will be lower. We don't know the combat strength of the enemy's personnel. They entered the Colton Star Cluster from the Desolate Universe Belt and did not go through identity checks. They have not stopped to resupply so far. Everyone nodded. The Amethyst civilization's intelligence network covered the entire star cluster. They only needed a rush over. They had 3 Calamity-grade supers, so the enemy's advantage of merely 20 battleships was meaningless. It's just a small fleet. Han Shao raised his brows. He originally thought that it would be a very difficult mission, but it turned out that it was just to clear out a bunch of small fries. To think that a few Calamity-grade supers would be involved in such a small matter. He felt that the main goal of the Amethyst civilization was to select some new private armed organizations for cooperation. Ding! A notification popped up on the interface. You have triggered the mission Amethyst Civilization's warning. Han Shao glanced at it casually and skipped over the experience reward. A reward of more than 1,000,000 anas was nothing to him at the moment. The only reward that he felt was worth 330 faction contribution points from the Amethyst Civilization. The higher the level of the faction, the harder it was to farm favorability. However, because of Han Zhao's mini-star system legendary points, his current relationship with the Amethyst Civilization was not cold, but neutral. His initial faction favorability was 450 points. If he wanted cutting-edge knowledge, farming faction favorability was the most feasible way. At this moment, Dottle suddenly thought of something. By the way, there's one more thing. The star system civilization in charge of the Thousand Lights star system requested assistance from Purple Crystal a while ago. One of their top combatants went missing, and they requested our help to find him. The missing person is called Kernid, nicknamed Dark Purple Warlock. This is what he looks like. If you find any clues, remember to tell me. Han Xiao was stunned and felt that the name sounded familiar. Kernid seems to be a name on the hunting list. With a thought, Han Xiao made a mental note of this. Thousand Light Star System, Star Zone 9. The target of the joint operation, a fleet disguised as interstellar travelers, was slowly moving through the universe. In the command room of the main ship, Captain Brett was recording data. Voyage log K, 003015. It has been 134 days since we entered the Colton star cluster. Everything is normal. Sixth intelligence collection in progress. Current reconnaissance area is the Thousand Lights star system. Civilization development, colony planet ecology, garrison situation, and other data have been packaged and transmitted. Next stop is to head to the core area of the Colton star cluster, the White Top star system, to investigate the Amethyst civilization. After the voyage log was sent out, the system completely destroyed the data. Brett rubbed his eyes to relieve his fatigue. Warning, warning, unknown fleet approaching. At this moment, the lights in the room turned into a blinding red. The alarm of the spaceship's AI rang, and Brett immediately came to his senses. He rushed to the front of the radar screen and saw an unknown fleet heading straight for them, about to enter their field of vision. Send a message to the other party and ask for their identity. Tell them we're just interstellar travelers. Brett shouted. However, the message was like a stone sinking into the ocean. There was no reply. Very soon, the attacking fleet appeared and opened fire at Brett's fleet without saying a word. The battle erupted. The enemy isn't a galactic pirate. We've been targeted. Brett's face darkened. He was very experienced and immediately understood that they were in deep trouble this time. Brett immediately made a decision. While shouting to counterattack, he recorded a video and sent it back to the organization to let the headquarters know who the enemy was. This attacking fleet was Han Zhao's group. Jane and Gadelli were commanding the fleet to fight the enemy. All kinds of lights flashed, and the blacklight stealth was idling by the side. In the cockpit, Han Xiao narrowed his eyes as he observed the battlefield. Although the enemy isn't much of a threat, it's a good opportunity to test out my new weapon. As he spoke, Han Xiao switched to autopilot mode, came to the launch port at the belly of the cabin, and jumped into the universe with the Berserk 8 mechanical suit. The mechanical suit was isolated from the universe environment. Compared to the battleship, Han Zhao's size was like an ant compared to an elephant. However, the next moment, mechanical force flashed, and countless mechanical components extended out from the interior of the Berserk 8 mechanical suit. In the blink of an eye, a 30 to 40 meter tall, giant soldier mechanical suit was formed. Its size was not inferior to a small assault ship, and the huge energy wave made both sides look at it with surprise. Giant soldier, ship destroyer, third generation improved version. In the past 2 years, Han Xiao had filled in his high-end knowledge and finally reverse-engineered the blueprint of the spaceship, learning how to build a battleship. Based on this technology, he improved the blueprint of the ship destroyer that Carol had given him and enhanced it twice. Compared to the first generation, the third generation ship destroyer looked much more beautiful. It went from a cylindrical shape to a human shape with 4 limbs and a head. The giant soldier mechanical suit was a mechanical weapon designed for galactic combat. Its performance was extremely strong, and with Han Zhao's mechanical force bonus, its power was terrifying. Other than virtual intrusion, Han Xiao had even more powerful galactic combat methods. In the cockpit of the third-generation ship destroyer, Han Xiao completed the nerve connection. The giant mechanical suit was like an extension of his arm, and a little mental burden was nothing to an expert of his level. Han Xiao could not help but miss it. It's been a long time since I piloted a large mechanical suit. I wonder if I've gotten rusty. Brett's eyes widened, and his voice cracked. It's a giant soldier mechanical suit. Focus fire on it. Every qualified commander knew the deterrence of a giant soldier in a galactic battle. Compared to a cumbersome battleship, the agility of a giant soldier mechanical suit was the nightmare of a fleet. Once a giant soldier appeared in a galactic battle, it would definitely become the target of focus fire. Countless laser beams were fired at him, expanding rapidly in his field of vision. Han Zhao's fighting spirit appeared on his face. With a thought, the three-dimensional maneuvering system of the third-generation ship destroyer was activated. Like a rabbit, it rushed into the barrage of bullets, narrowly dodging the laser beams. Its high-level energy shield blocked the stray bullets. Han Technician's piloting skills had been honed through countless battles. Only the giant soldier mechanical suit could allow him to show his true skills. The huge mechanical suit moved like a ghost, quickly approaching the enemy fleet. This time, two huge cannons extended out from the back of the third-generation ship destroyer, placed on both sides of its shoulders, and shot out thick beams of blazing energy, causing the shields of the enemy ships to vibrate. Immediately after, four giant hovering guards appeared, surrounding the third-generation ship destroyer to defend and counterattack. The moment Han Zhao took out the giant soldier mechanical suit, the focus of the entire battlefield was on him. After a while, the third-generation ship destroyer finally approached an enemy ship at the edge. The ship's shield blocked him outside. At this time, the space around the third-generation ship destroyer was visually distorted. Han Zhao activated the anti-shield phase cancellation band, and the shield of the enemy ship in front of him suddenly dimmed, flickering, and its defense was greatly reduced. In the past 2 years, Han Zhao had not wasted his time. He had spent a lot of experience gambling on blueprints and created countless good things. The third-generation ship destroyer had condensed a lot of technical essence. The next moment, the third-generation ship destroyer threw out a heat-melting chainsaw and slashed diagonally. Like cutting tofu, it cut the enemy ship in front of it into two halves, and the cut was glowing red. Time seemed to freeze for a moment. The next moment, the two halves of the enemy ship exploded into a firework. If it were not for the vacuum environment, the explosion would have been deafening. The fire was dazzling, and Jane and Gadeli could not help but twitch their faces. What was there to compete for? The limelight was still stolen by Black Star. How could their performance be more dazzling than this giant soldier mechanical suit? Black Star did not bring any troops. He was really enough alone. How much did this giant soldier cost? Jane murmured. Chapter 622. There was no suspense in the Battle of Annihilation. Brett's troops were completely annihilated, and the battlefield became deathly silent. Han Zhao cooperated with Jane and Gadeli's troops, piloting the third-generation ship destroyer and cutting through the enemy fleet. The enemy fleet did not have the slightest ability to fight back. He now had two methods of galactic warfare. Virtual intrusion was tricky, and piloting the giant soldier was simple and crude. With such small fries, there was no need for him to go through the trouble of invading. It was best to just cut them down. Han Zhao had seen thousands of battleships firing at each other in his previous life, and he had even participated in the battle personally. Compared to the density of cannon fire in a large-scale galactic battle, this small-scale battle did not give him any pressure at all. He did not find it difficult to dodge the attacks at all. The performance of the third-generation ship destroyer was also one of the reasons. Han Zhao had spent a lot of effort perfecting the blueprint of this giant soldier mechanical suit. God knew how many functions it had, and it would be of the greatest use in this kind of small-scale galactic battle. Building the third-generation ship destroyer cost more than 5 million anas, which was much more expensive than some of the high-grade small battleships. If it was 2 years ago, this amount of money would have made his heart ache. But now it was only average at most. The ability of the Black Star Corps to earn money could even beat Floating Dragon Island. Han Zhao vaguely remembered that the last time he checked his account balance, he seemed to have more than 80 million anas in liquid funds, and his fixed assets were a few times that amount. Although this was far from a commercial financial group, he was still a young and promising leak scholar. No, a leader in organization. Originally, Jane and Gadeli's troops were the main attackers, but once Han Xiao joined the battle, he immediately took over their position and dominated the battle. They could only help Han Xiao contain the enemy. After watching the entire battle, they had a deep impression of Han Xiao's style of piloting the giant soldier. In summary, flirtatious, luxurious, naughty. The third-generation ship destroyer also suffered some damage. In just a short battle, a large amount of fuel was burned. Han Xiao recalled the third-generation ship destroyer and returned to Rista's body to meet up with Jane and Gadeli. The three of them left the scene of the crime and headed to the nearest uninhabited planet to rest. You guys did a great job. Dottle contacted the three of them and praised them. The rewards were transferred to everyone's accounts, and Han Zhao's mission was completed. The faction favorability of the Amethyst civilization increased slightly. I'm sure everyone has their own guesses. That's right, this is a simple test. We're going to select some reliable, non-official forces to work with. You've all displayed your strength, so I hope we can have a pleasant cooperation in the future. Jane and Gadeli were overjoyed. They thought that Black Star had stolen all the limelight and that they would not have a chance to work together. Now, they were pleasantly surprised. Dottle explained to them, everyone has experienced the chaos in the Shattered Star Ring in the past 2 years. The situation in the future will be even more complicated and dangerous. We are secretly expanding our armed forces and looking for more partners like you to protect the safety of the Colton Star Cluster. I can't tell you the details, but I can tell you something. The higher-ups are preparing to form a new secret force, and you are all candidates. Forming a secret force? Han Xiao immediately perked up. He knew which part of the storyline this was. During the Crimson Tide in version 3.0, due to the chaos, forming a group had become a trend. Not only the Amethyst civilization, but many star cluster civilizations had secretly gathered armed forces in their territories to protect the security of their territories and formed a secret organization like a guardian. For example, the Shattered Star Ring Mercenary Alliance in version 3.0 was a product of mercenaries forming a group. These groups were the factions that the players in Han Zhao's previous life could choose in version 3.0. Han Xiao remembered that the organization formed by the Amethyst civilization was called Section 0, which meant that it was the hidden department of the Amethyst civilization. The members were all experts and organizations from various star systems in the Colton Star Cluster. They would accept the long-term employment of the Amethyst civilization and become partners with the Purple Crystal Army. In other words, Jane and Gadeli would be his teammates in the future. Han Xiao would not reject such a good opportunity. Not to mention that the cutting-edge knowledge would still be in the hands of the Amethyst civilization. Just becoming a member of Section 0 was a good thing in itself. It was an opportunity to build a relationship with a star cluster civilization in the long term. In his previous life, when the players entered version 3.0, these organizations had already been formed. What the players saw was the result of the organization taking shape. However, what was in front of Han Xiao now was the embryonic stage of the organization's preparation. This was undoubtedly a better opportunity. He did not even need to recommend himself. The Amethyst civilization had already taken a liking to him. His current position could not be separated from his hard work and the efforts of the players. If he could become the main force of Section 0, it would be equivalent to making a name for himself in the Shattered Star Ring. His reputation and status would increase greatly, and he would become a first-rate organization in the Colton Star Cluster. This was a shortcut for him to develop to a higher level. If the remuneration is sufficient, I'm more than willing, Han Xiao replied. Jane and Gadeli also regained their senses and responded, expressing that they were more than willing to join the secret organization that the Amethyst civilization was about to form. The remuneration will not disappoint you. The organization is still in the process of selection. When it is officially formed, we will have a large number of missions, Dottle said. We will have a mission soon. The Amethyst civilization's move was equivalent to a global conscription. Originally, the Amethyst civilization also had a few organizations that they were working with. However, in the past 2 years, Clint had been very restless. The Amethyst civilization had a premonition that their conflict with the Clint kingdom would become more and more intense. There was a high chance that a secret war would break out. The so-called secret war would be when the government's army kept shouting, "Come over here," but they would not start a war no matter what. Instead, they would secretly use their collaborators to kill each other and cut off the other party's wings. This was a way of fighting under the restrictions of the peace treaty. The ones fighting to the death were the collaborators. Of course, the star cluster civilizations knew that if they wanted the horse to run, they had to let the horse eat grass. Thus, they were very generous and gave their collaborators a large amount of resources. It could be said that as long as they could survive the secret war, the collaborators were used as pawns would be able to soar into the sky. Han Shao understood the thinking of the Amethyst civilization. It was impossible to develop without taking risks. Although he had a decent organization, it was impossible for him to grow too big. Han Shao knew that he had to adjust his position at all times. Unless Ames became a collaborator of Purple Crystal, he did not have enough bargaining chips when facing a star cluster civilization. He had not reached the point where he could bargain with the Purple Crystal civilization, and the Purple Crystal civilization would not beg him to join. Instead, this was an opportunity for him to develop, and it was essentially a fair trade. As long as the remuneration was sufficient, he did not mind fighting for the Amethyst civilization. Now that he had the strength, he could boldly forge ahead. Unlike Jane and Gadeli, who were overjoyed, Han Shao had already habitually started to deduce the consequences of his choice. The Secret War. Han Shao stroked his chin. This was one of the main plots of version 3.0. If one ignored the complicated interests behind the Crimson Tide, the main theme of version 3.0 would be chaotic war. Section 0 would fight with the many collaborators of the Clint Kingdom, and they would definitely not be able to avoid the Bloodshed Land. As long as the tyrant did not make a move, everything would be fine. He was not afraid of the other muscleheads at all. He had never been afraid of an opponent of the same level. Xiao. At this moment, the sound of a spaceship could be heard from the horizon. Han Shao and the others stopped talking and looked up. A small and exquisite single-person spaceship had arrived on this planet without them knowing. Did they pass by to collect resources? Jane asked. I'm not sure. Gadeli shook his head. The hatch of the single-person spaceship opened, and a woman wearing a white coat floated in midair. She wore a silver cat mask on her face and looked down at the group on the ground with a cold gaze. Who are you? Gadeli asked. Looking at this uninvited guest and feeling the powerful energy fluctuations in the woman's body, he could not help but be vigilant. This was a calamity-grade super. Shauna ignored him and looked around. Her gaze landed on Han Shao, and she asked calmly, Black Star? Han Shao narrowed his eyes and did not answer. He could vaguely feel that she did not come with good intentions. It doesn't matter if you don't answer. You won't be able to escape today. Shauna looked around and muttered to herself, 3 calamity-grade supers. That's a little difficult. Ka. The next moment, Shauna made her move. From a moment she appeared to the moment she made her move, the entire process took less than 10 seconds. She reached out and clenched her fist. Half of the dozens of spaceships parked on the ground instantly disintegrated into metal fragments and exploded violently. Countless fragments turned into a metal storm. In just an instant, a portion of Jane and Gadeli's subordinates were turned into minced meat. Gadeli was furious. The battle suit on his body flowed like water, and nanoparticles gathered in his hand, turning into a shockingly large gun. Dozens of barrels fired at Shauna at the same time. The explosive power was extremely strong, and the light cannons were all infused with his mechanical force. Dong, dong, dong. A sudden fierce battle broke out instantly. Shauna flicked her finger, and an invisible magnetic field appeared around her. Her defense was extremely strong, and the flames of the explosion covered her body. However, they were all blocked by the magnetic field, and she was not injured at all. Then, Shauna clenched her fist. Bang! The huge cannon in Gadeli's hand instantly deflated and shattered, turning into nanoparticles all over the ground like a pile of sand. Metal control and magnetic field control? Han Zhao's expression froze. This uninvited guest was clearly here for him. Her ability was extremely effective against mechanics, and he did not know where she came from. This attack came without any warning. All of a sudden, he had a flash of inspiration as he thought of that hunting list. No way. Could it be so coincidental? Han Zhao was surprised. He was confused as to how this enemy knew that he was here. He was acting alone, and other than the Amethyst civilization, only Jane and Gadeli could leak information. No, there's another possibility. Han Zhao suddenly thought of the fleet that he had just annihilated. They must have sent the information back before they were annihilated. Could it be that this group of hunters was related to Clint? Hoo-hoo! Huge metal fragments whizzed toward him. This was not the time to think. Han Zhao was about to use Berserk Ape, but when he thought of the other party's Esper ability, he frowned and had no choice but to give up on the idea of using the mechanical suit. He dodged with his own attributes and jumped far away. The metal fragments created a huge crater on the ground with a loud bang, and debris flew everywhere. Shauna was single-handedly fighting everyone and multitasking. With just a few simple taps of her fingers, she destroyed the equipment on Gadeli's body. With a swing of her hand, she sent Gadeli flying far away. Jane was shocked when he saw this. The combat power of this uninvited guest was beyond his expectations. Han Zhao had a headache. Facing an opponent like this, mechanics would definitely be restricted. Many of his methods would be easily nullified by the other party, and he would lose a lot of money. This was the enemy whose ability was the most effective against him so far. Metal control is the nemesis of mechanics. This woman's ability is probably at A+ level. If this continues, the situation will not be good. Chapter 623. Any class would meet its nemesis. The Esper class was the most unique. It could be countered by the other 4 classes, but it could also be countered by the random nature of Esper ability awakening. Among the 5 superclasses, the advantages and disadvantages of Esper abilities were equally obvious. Combat power depended on the different Esper abilities, and the class knowledge tree was also a jack of all trades. It increased the strength, control, range, usage, and so on. The advantages were obvious. Esper abilities could shine in a single aspect, but their weaknesses were equally obvious. They lacked abilities in other aspects, and their abilities had their own limitations. For example, teleportation. Its weakness was naturally its defense. For example, high-speed regeneration and immortality. It clearly did not have much combat power. For example, prophecy. Of course, these were all relatively extreme Esper abilities, but also show that the advantages and disadvantages of Esper abilities were prominent. To the players, obtaining a special Esper ability greatly increased the fun in the game, and there were countless tycoons who spent money to buy Esper ability gene awakening potions. Other than those lucky tycoons, some African chiefs and tycoons would constantly use gene awakening potions in order to obtain an Esper ability that they liked until they succeeded. In the team battles of the Pro League, the rational allocation of personnel to deal with the opponent's Esper was also a strategic point. Espers with magnetic field metal manipulation would naturally not be able to fight against pugilists and mages. However, it happened to be the nemesis of mechanics, and Han Zhao will be lying if he said that he was not troubled. Although he was a mechanic and also had magnetic energy, compared to an enemy with awakened Esper genes, the strength of his magnetic field manipulation ability was worlds apart. The use of mechanical force was more to strengthen machinery, and magnetic field manipulation was only an additional ability. At most, it would hinder the opponent's Esper ability. If he wanted to completely neutralize the opponent's magnetic field, he would have to rely on special machinery. When they exchanged blows, Han Zhao looked at the combat information and knew that the opponent was called Shauna. Her level was actually a question mark. He was already level 170, and even if Shauna was not A+, she was not far from it. The huge difference in strength was very difficult to make up for. Rista, get away from the battlefield first. Han Xiao dodged the metal fragments and ordered Rista. If the Blacklight stealth was destroyed, he would suffer a huge loss. The Blacklight stealth quickly rose into the air and was about to leave the battlefield. Seeing this, Shauna did not care. She stretched out her hand and aimed at the Blacklight stealth, preparing to crush Han Zhao's spaceship like how she had crushed the other spaceships. Bang! In the next moment, a white figure crashed into Shauna's magnetic field shield like a meteor with a lightning-like tail of flame behind it. Shockwaves spread out as it broke through the sound barrier and crashed into Shauna's magnetic field shield. The invisible magnetic field caved in and bounced the white figure away as if it was elastic. Shauna was not injured, but she was sent flying for a short distance by the recoil. She quickly controlled the metal on her body to stabilize herself in the air. She looked down at the white figure expressionlessly. Han Xiao had changed into a bone-white mecha. It was the Void Dragon mecha that had retired to the second line. This person's ability restrains me, so I can only take out non-metallic weapons to face the enemy. Han Xiao thought to himself. The metal content of the Void Dragon mechanical suit was very small. Although its attributes could not keep up with a Calamity grade, it was not as restrained as the Berserk Ape and could still be used. Most of his machines were made of alloy materials, and non-metallic machines probably only accounted for about 10% of the total. Many machines had strict requirements for the properties of the materials used. High-density, non-metallic materials that could replace all kinds of alloys were difficult to synthesize. Based on the difference in materials, the properties of the machines would also fluctuate. Before encountering an enemy that could control metal, alloys were naturally the most cost-effective. If it did not use galactic-grade alloys, carbon nanotubes would be a good choice. However, his previous opponent was Ashes. Even if he wanted to build machines to counter his opponent, it would be after the battle. At this time, Han Zhao's army style and large number of main battle machines could not be used unless he did not care about the losses. The way he saw it, the current situation was far from that stage. Let's test our limits first. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. Taking advantage of the time when Shauna was distracted, Rista accelerated and successfully left the battlefield, avoiding the fate of being torn apart into scrap metal. All the remaining spaceships were crushed into pieces by Shauna, forming a metal storm that swept toward Han Xiao. Other than Han Xiao and the other two Calamity-grade supers, everyone else was killed. Some of the Grade C warriors wearing metal battle suits were directly sent to their deaths by the sandstorm. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Han Xiao shuttled through the metal storm, dodging nimbly. His palm cannon fired continuously at Shauna, but the void jet spray could not penetrate Shauna's magnetic field shield. Its defense was amazing. At this time, Jane gritted his teeth and roared. Huh! His shirt was torn apart, revealing his muscular body. His body vibrated at a high frequency, and the surrounding air vibrated. The vibrating force was transmitted to the ground under his feet, and the surface area of the ground cracked rapidly. Immediately after, Jane slapped his palm toward Shauna, who was in midair. Dong! A huge, formless vibration wave went straight for Shauna. Wherever it passed, the air would distort and form an oval shape. The momentum was shocking. Shauna frowned slightly and moved horizontally in midair, quickly dodging. Only Jane was not restrained. Han Xiao looked over and saw that Jane was bare-chested, and his chest hair was trembling freely. What a mouthful of burly man's chest hair. At this time, a sudden mission popped up on the interface. You have triggered hidden grade A-chain mission, Prey. Mission introduction. You are the prey of a terrifying organization. They will hunt you down again and again until they succeed. Do not have any hope of escaping. Their background is beyond your imagination. You have no other choice. Try your best to struggle. You may still have a glimmer of hope. First round. Defeat Shauna Reward. 3,700 experience and draw one of Shauna's abilities or talents. Terrifying organization? Interesting. Han Xiao looked at the mission introduction and had a thought. He remembered the storyline in his previous life, but Shauna did not seem to be related to any organization in his memory. It seemed like it might be a hidden organization that the players had not come into contact with in his previous life. Their targets were all famous Grade A supers, so it was indeed difficult for them to interact with the players. This thought flashed through his mind. He was still in the middle of the battle, and the three of them were surrounding Shauna. Jane and Gadeli were both Calamity Grade supers, so they could cooperate with Han Xiao without the need for words. Since they were helpers, Han Xiao would naturally make use of them. He took up the responsibility of fighting head-on and attacked Shauna's magnetic field shield time and time again. Jane acted as the main attacker, and the threat of his vibration attacks forced Shauna to dodge continuously. As for Gadeli, he did not approach after being sent flying and ran dozens of kilometers away. The strength of a gunner master was long-range attacks, so he attacked crazily from afar. A range of dozens of kilometers was nothing to a Grade A gunner master, and his accuracy was still accurate. As long as the power was not reduced, he could shoot even further. His nickname, 100-turn cannon, was a reference to his attack frequency. The continuous long-range attacks made Shauna feel very uncomfortable. She wanted to target Gadeli, but she was held back by Han Xiao. Boom, boom, boom. The few of them were in a chaotic battle. The attacks of Calamity Grade supers were powerful, and the ground cracked and exploded. Again and again. Both parties were in a stalemate, and Shauna was a little frustrated. Brett, who had been beaten up by Han Xiao and the others, was actually a member of an intelligence organization under Bloodshed Land. He had received Clint's orders to come to Colton to gather information. Coincidentally, Shauna's organization had a special relationship with Clint. After capturing Kernid, she happened to be in this area. After Brett was attacked, the intelligence organization that he was in had notified Shauna, who was nearby, to ask for help. However, Shauna had arrived late, but because of that, she had discovered Black Star's tracks. Thus, she changed her target and directly attacked Black Star. The way she saw it, Black Star had sent himself to her, so she did not have to go to the Garden Star system to deal with him. Shauna had come with absolute confidence to deal with Black Star, but she did not expect to be in a tough battle. In Brett's intelligence, there was no information about Jane and Gadeli. Because Han Xiao had controlled the third-generation ship destroyer to quickly finish off the fleet, the two of them had no choice but to take action. Now, they had become unexpected reinforcements. Game over. Shauna did not want to waste any more time. She suddenly pointed her hands at the ground and fully activated her Esper ability. Rumble. The ground shook violently. The next moment, something shocking happened. Within a radius of tens of kilometers, holes suddenly collapsed. Almost 100 giant snakes, made of metal particles, broke through the ground. They were more than 10 meters thick and had an endless length. The ground was instantly riddled with holes. Earth Dragon Flip. The next second, hundreds of giant metal snakes rose into the air and crashed toward the three of them, triggering the planet's magnetic field and using the metal elements underground. What a terrifying ability. Han Xiao immediately felt troubled. An Esper with a magnetic field metal control ability definitely needed metal to unleash their strength. If it was just those spaceship fragments, Shauna's threat would not be high. However, her ability was strong enough to trigger the planet's magnetic field, which was equivalent to the entire planet being Shauna's arsenal. This was a well-deserved natural disaster. Gadeli's eyes widened. He quickly tried to distance himself, but he was caught up by two giant metal snakes. The giant metal snakes swallowed Gadeli whole. Then, the two giant snakes merged and turned into a metal sphere with a diameter of a few hundred meters. It crashed heavily onto the ground. Ka. The sphere kept squeezing and increasing its density, trapping Gadeli inside. This was Shauna's tried and tested move. Jane panicked. She slammed her fists on the ground. Clearly, she had used some kind of ability. A shockwave spread out. Boom! The frequency of the shockwave triggered a chain reaction of stress. The vibration of the ground suddenly increased, and a terrifying earthquake swept through the area. Countless giant metal snakes were directly shattered into iron sand. This attack caused a huge commotion. Further away, a huge rift valley appeared on the ground, as if the planet had opened its mouth. Boom! The shockwave hit the metal sphere, trapping Gadeli. The next moment, the sphere was shattered into pieces. Gadeli hurriedly broke free, his face covered in dust. Han Xiao was shocked. Jane's destructive power had shocked him. Her nickname of Seaquake was true to her name. Any Esper who could reach grade A was not weak. It should be known that if one's Esper potential did not reach grade A, their individual strength would definitely not reach grade A. Boom, boom, boom. Shauna and Jane completely unleashed their firepower. The battlefield kept shifting, and the area within hundreds of kilometers became a mess. Countless caves collapsed, and giant snakes slithered. It was like a disaster. Han Xiao and Gadeli watched from the side. However, although the commotion was shocking, Shauna was hovering in the air. The earthquake did not affect her at all. She had the absolute upper hand. Glancing at Han Xiao, who was dodging everywhere, a look of disdain flashed across Shauna's eyes. She shook her head. Although Black Star was the target on the list, his presence was almost non-existent. His performance was far worse than Jane's. Instead, Jane was more qualified to be the target. Shauna was a little disappointed. Rumors had it that Black Star was very powerful. She felt that he was just SOSO. He did not live up to his name. Thinking about it, she countered Black Star. It was normal that Black Star did not have the ability to fight back. If not for these two reinforcements, it would not be so troublesome. Shauna frowned. As long as she took care of Jane and Gadeli, Black Star would be a piece of cake. However, she had a new idea. Jane was very powerful and would become a member of the list sooner or later. She might as well capture Black Star and Jane here and now. As for that gunner, she felt that he was just SOSO. There was no value in capturing him. Just then, a gap appeared in Jane's defense. Shauna grabbed the opportunity and wrapped Jane with a giant metal snake, turning him into a sphere. Jane kept shaking inside, trying to break the cage. However, Shauna focused most of her energy on him. She controlled dozens of giant metal snakes to stack on top of the sphere. The giant sphere kept shrinking, and its density kept increasing. Its ability to resist earthquakes skyrocketed. The shaking inside became smaller and smaller. Jane could not struggle anymore. Done. Shauna's eyes lit up. She had Jane under control. From her point of view, the battle was over. Black Star had lost his powerful reinforcements and could be captured easily. Shauna turned around and stared at Han Xiao through the dust in the air. She said calmly, "Your reinforcements are gone. Now it's your turn." Han Xiao suddenly stopped and looked at Shauna from afar. Just when Shauna thought that Han Xiao had given up resisting, Han Xiao suddenly laughed. "You're right. It's my turn." Buzz. The next second, a continuous roar came from the sky. Shauna looked up. 50 stars fell from above her head at an unbelievable speed. These stars were all the eye of God's railguns. Each beam had a diameter of about 7 to 8 meters. Shauna's pupils contracted. She only had time to form a magnetic field shield. The next moment, 50 satellite energy beams fell. Boom! A deafening explosion swept across the area. The incessant shock waves from the strong winds blew everything around them away. Gadeli was sent flying far away, while the giant metal ball that was enveloping Jane shot through the air and embedded itself deeply into a mountain more than 10 kilometers away. A dazzling mushroom cloud of flames rose into the sky. Their vision was completely white, and they could not see anything. Countless rocks turned into ashes, and the giant metal snake melted into molten iron. This scene was like the end of the world. Even in outer space, they could see a blazing red mushroom rising from the planet's surface. Han Xiao looked like he was slacking, but in fact he was commanding Rista, who had left the battle, to place 50 Eye of God's space-based satellite cannons in the warehouse in outer space. One round of orbital bombardment was enough to destroy an entire city. The enemy had displayed powerful control skills. He could only tank, but it would be difficult to defeat the enemy. Only powerful firepower could determine victory. Han Xiao put his hands on his hips and chuckled. Chapter 624. The strategic support style was known for its powerful off-field firepower. Han Xiao especially liked this kind of fighting style. In the past 2 years, he had replenished the number of satellite orbital cannons and placed them in the storage of the Blacklight stealth at all times. It could be said to be a must-have weapon for traveling and killing. The blazing mushroom cloud continued to expand and rise, creating a huge crater in the ground. Han Xiao did not waste any time. The mechanical suit's thrusters spat out, and he led the charge into the explosion zone, heading straight for the bottom of the crater. The combat information showed the damage caused by this round of attacks. Shauna had continuously strengthened her magnetic field shield, which reduced most of the damage. Furthermore, with her equipment's defense and personal resistance, this round of attacks was not enough to heavily injure her. Furthermore, with dozens of orbital cannons fired at the same time, the attack power was naturally not concentrated enough, wasting a lot of power. The biggest effect of this attack was to temporarily turn the situation around and interrupt the enemy's control. Han Xiao did not plan to give Shauna any time to catch her breath. He immediately chased after her. Shauna and her shield were blasted into the ground, and a hemispherical magnetic field shield was exposed at the bottom of the crater. It was very eye-catching in the flames and dust. Boom! At this time, Shauna suddenly raised her head. Her mask had already been shattered, revealing a face with a twisted expression. A stream of blood flowed down her forehead, and her eyes were filled with murderous intent. It was as if she had already expected Han Xiao to chase after her. She pressed her palm on the ground, and a fountain of metal particles shot out from the ground below Han Xiao, grabbing toward Han Xiao. Grade A supers were all very experienced. The moment she was hit by the orbital cannons, Shauna had already guessed what Han Xiao was going to do next. While resisting the attack, she had also set up a trap and gathered the metal particles around her. This was all to catch Black Star, who was flying around like a fly. However, the next moment, Han Xiao's figure suddenly disappeared. Who? Less than a meter behind her, she suddenly felt a gust of wind. Her sharp senses told her that there was one more person in the magnetic field shield. Race talent, advanced void travel. How did he break through the magnetic field shield? Shauna's expression changed drastically. Before she could turn around, the back of her head was grabbed by a large hand wrapped in a bone-white mech. An irresistible force exploded, and with a bang, she was pressed face down into the ground. In the next second, the gray light of void energy flowed out of the Void Dragon mechanical suit and gathered on its arm. Full power Void Jet. Boom, boom, boom. Void Jet could attack continuously without any cooldown, but the price was that the energy consumption would increase continuously. Han Xiao did not hold back at all and used up almost all of the Void Dragon's remaining energy. After the first shot, he activated the injection module in the mecha and injected a gene agent. In the past 2 years, he had captured countless space pirates. His private prison had been renamed as the Space Pirates' Warm Hut. He had collected a large number of genetic agents that could adapt to any situation. This agent gave the character a temporary ability that made it easier to stun. The consecutive shots of Void Jet directly triggered this effect, and Shauna entered a stunned state. Her mind was in a mess, and she could not resist at all. Thus, she could only obediently take on Han Xiao's storm-like attacks and let him do whatever he wanted. Her body was trembling nonstop from the explosions. After the last shot, Shauna was still in a stunned state and could not use her ability. Han Xiao did not say anything and directly switched to the Berserk Ape, entering a state of lightning overload. He raised his arms high, and the dazzling lightning energy gathered in his fists. In the next instant, his fists smashed down. Bang! The lightning exploded like a spider web, and the bottom of the crater was filled with cracks again. A loud explosion sounded. Han Xiao went all out in this attack. With the power explosion of the Berserk ape, his gene liberation, and the critical hits that were occasionally triggered while Shauna was in a stunned state, the damage multiplier was more than 10 times. Crack! Even with the deafening sound of the collision, Han Xiao could clearly hear the sound of Shauna's bones breaking. Han Xiao's face was calm, and he did not use any tricks. He grabbed Shauna's neck, took a lunge, turned around, and threw Shauna out like a softball. The moment she left his hand, a circular shockwave exploded in the air. Berserk throw. Who? Shauna flew out like a cannonball, instantly flying out of the area covered by the mushroom cloud. The distance between them increased, and she almost disappeared from sight. However, this was not the end of the combo. Shauna flew far away, and just as she was about to recover from the stunned state, dozens of stars lit up in the sky. The second round of orbital volley. Boom! The second mushroom cloud rose slowly. The shockwave arrived as expected. Han Zhao's mechanical suit on his legs transformed into a foundation, firmly stabilizing his body, and he was not blown out. Han Xiao waved his hand, and a huge square gun appeared beside his feet. It looked like a big box, 2 meters tall, and there were more than 20 nozzles at the top of the box. This was a grenade launcher. He carried it on one shoulder and fired at the center of the second mushroom cloud in the distance. Bang, bang, bang. Countless specially made grenade missiles were shot out of the box with flames trailing behind them. They flew in a parabola, crossed a long distance, and hit the target, causing a series of violent explosions. The grenade missiles were all small-yield nuclear grenades and space distortion bombs, and the magazines were quickly emptied. In the distance, Gadeli finally rescued Jane from the metal ball. The two of them looked at this scene and swallowed their saliva. This is too cruel. This is practically a massacre. After emptying his magazine, this combo had dealt tons of damage. However, there was still no kill notification, which meant that Shauna was still alive. As a super who was close to A+, her resistance to attacks was also very strong. Han Xiao switched to Void Dragon again and consumed some energy to recover some of the mechanical suit's energy. Just as he was about to follow up with another attack, Shauna's figure suddenly rushed out of the mushroom cloud. She soared into the sky at high speed, and all the giant metal snakes followed closely behind. They merged together like a lone mountain rising from the ground. She's escaping? No, she's going to dismantle my satellite railgun. Han Zhao's eyes focused, activated the launcher, and chased after her. The two of them headed straight for outer space, one after the other. Damn it! Shauna glanced at Han Xiao, who was chasing after her, and gritted her teeth. She had taken a series of explosive attacks and suffered the most damage from the stunned state. She was severely injured. Her left arm was limp, and the bones in her arm were broken into abstract art. Her left leg was also twisted abnormally, and the left side of her body was severely damaged by Han Xiao. She did not know how many ribs were still connected, but her chest and back were burning with pain. She was in a very bad state. It had been a long time since she had been injured like this. She was shocked and angry at this moment. She was shocked by Black Star's sudden burst of firepower, and angry that she was severely injured. If only Elliot was here. Shauna could not help but think of her mage partner. She secretly regretted acting alone. She had been too careless this time. Although she was severely injured, Shauna had no intention of retreating in her anger. She was going to dismantle all of Black Star's firepower support in outer space. This way, the battle could still be fought. In Han Zhao's vision, the surface of the Earth was shrinking rapidly. The two of them charged into the sky, and he controlled all of the eyes of God to aim at Shauna. He took turns to shoot at her, wanting to slow her down. However, Shauna was prepared. Her flight path was irregular, and she never flew in a straight line. At the same time, she used the gigantic metal snake as a shield, blocking or dodging all of the railgun shots. Looks like I can't stop her, Han Xiao calmly judged. Without any hesitation, he activated the recovery system of all the satellite cannons, and the eyes of God flew back to the Blacklight Stealth's warehouse. He was going to let Rista take the weapons and leave the battlefield again. With the mobility of the blacklight stealth, Shauna was helpless. The two of them finally approached the edge of the atmosphere. In front of them was the pitch-black environment of the universe. The blacklight stealth had already recovered all of its satellite cannons and was leaving this planet. Shauna gritted her teeth and raised her right arm with difficulty, about to activate her Esper ability. Han Zhao's advanced void travel had not finished its cooldown yet. Just as he was about to fire another void jet at Shauna, a beam of light suddenly shot out from the surface and accurately hit Shauna. This time, she was not prepared and was sent flying, tumbling in the sky. On the ground, Gadeli was operating a super-large rail sniper cannon with both hands. He was the one who had fired that shot. As a gunner, he had brought along guns that could adapt to various situations. This huge gun was specifically used for rail sniping. Gadeli was a grade A gun mechanic. Although he was beaten up by Shauna due to her ability being countered, it was not that he did not shine. When sniping a target in outer space, one had to consider parameters such as the rotation speed of the target. However, at his level, this was a normal operation. As long as the gun's performance was good enough, his sniping range was extremely high. This interrupted Shauna's ability. The blacklight stealth accelerated and escaped from Shauna's ability range. Shauna barely stabilized her body and floated in the air. She stared at Han Zhao and felt that the situation had become extremely troublesome. In her current state, the chances of capturing and defeating the 3 Calamity grades, including Black Star, were extremely slim. Shauna immediately had thoughts of retreating. Shauna did not want to gamble her life on something that she was not confident about. There was no need for that. Even if she failed, it would be the same the next time she brought her companions. Her failure this time would at most alert the enemy. However, in her opinion, even if Black Star was vigilant, it would be useless. She did not reveal any information, so Black Star had no idea who was targeting him. Next time, as long as she brought along powerful companions, under overwhelming combat power, regardless of whether Black Star was prepared or not, he would still be defeated. Thinking of this, Shauna's anger subsided. She regained her calmness and took this loss. She did not want to waste any more time. With a wave of her hand, the giant metal snake pounced toward Han Zhao. Then, she summoned a single-person spaceship and quickly sat in the cockpit. Han Zhao was entangled with the giant metal snake and could not chase after her. He also did not think of chasing after her. The Void Dragon mechanical suit could not outrun the spaceship, and the Berserk ape would be restrained. It was indeed very difficult for him to keep Shauna here. Most importantly, although Shauna was a rare opponent, Han Zhao did not want to kill her here. Shauna's spaceship quickly left. Before entering the hyperdrive, Han Zhao threw an observer's mark at Shauna. Without Shauna's control, the giant metal snake instantly collapsed and fell to the ground like rain. Han Zhao floated in the air and looked at the light trail left behind by Shauna's spaceship. He smirked. Treating me as prey is not that easy. The mysterious organization that Shauna belonged to had their eyes on him. Even if he killed Shauna, there would still be powerful enemies coming to kill him in the future. This was only a temporary solution. Currently, Han Zhao knew nothing about this mysterious organization. He urgently needed information. The Observer's Mark was the best ability to steal information. Han Zhao wanted to let Shauna go because he wanted to cast a long line to catch a big fish. The key to his mission was to figure out the background and scale of this mysterious organization and find their base. After all, there was no such thing as guarding against thieves for 1,000 days. Han Zhao did not want to live in fear of being ambushed at any moment. This mysterious organization was a ticking time bomb. If he wanted to get rid of it once and for all, this was the most efficient way. Although he would still have to face Shauna, who countered him, in the future, Han Zhao decided to change the focus of his machinery manufacturing during this period. He started to build non-metallic machines on a large scale, as well as special machines that could be controlled by magnetic fields. This would reduce Shauna's ability to counter him to the greatest extent. As long as he gave the mechanic class time to prepare, he would be able to create any counter. However, this woman is quite strong. If I didn't have two helpers, I would have a hard time fighting her. Han Xiao sighed. If it was a one-on-one battle, he had the ability to switch between health and energy, so the battle would become a battle of attrition. The chances of Shauna defeating him would be extremely low. However, with just his tankiness, he would have a hard time. Luckily, he had two helpers, Jane and Gadeli, to share the firepower. After defeating Shauna, the first round of the hidden grade A chain mission, Prey, popped up, and he received more than 30 million experience. Han Xiao did not immediately draw Shauna's ability. Without Fu Ding by his side, he was not confident. I'll draw it when I return to the base. Han Xiao shook his head helplessly. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.